I long to visit. Before Tong Yi could utter a word, Yao Qi, eyes wide with excitement, interjected. During her solitary travels through the primordial wilderness, she had heard tales of West Kunlun. It was said that the heavenly pool there was blanketed in pristine snow, a breathtaking sight. However, the vastness of the primordial realm had prevented her from reaching West Kunlun until now. Hearing that the Eastern King intended to host a banquet there, she could no longer contain her enthusiasm. Very well, I shall take you there, Tong Yi replied with a resigned smile, ruffling Yao Qi's hair. He then turned to the Eastern King and inquired softly, when shall it commence? The Eastern King, his gaze shifting, felt a mix of eagerness and hesitation. To be honest, he wished for it to begin immediately, for time was of the essence. Delays could lead to unforeseen complications. Yet, he also desired to spread the news throughout the primordial realms, ensuring that all formidable beings, and even those elusive ancient entities, were informed. Thus, he found himself in a state of inner conflict. Hearing Tong Yi's question, he could not outright declare a time. Instead, he respectfully suggested, perhaps the saint could set a date? Very well, let it be 3,000 years, Tong Yi replied, waving his hand to establish a time frame. He was not in a rush to cultivate. Rather, having gained profound insights into weapon forging, he wished to digest these revelations and experiment, attempting to forge some of the imaginative creations from his previous life. 3,000 years. The Eastern King and the Queen Mother were taken aback, not because they deemed it too lengthy, but rather too brief. They had anticipated that a saint's cultivation would take at least 10 yuan meetings to commence. To their astonishment, it was set for merely 3,000 years. However, they quickly regained their composure, not daring to question further. They bowed to Tong Yi, affirming yes, we shall obey. Thus, the gathering was scheduled to commence at the heavenly pool of West Kunlun after 3,000 years. Tong Yi nodded, and with that, the Eastern King and the Queen Mother took their leave, their smiles unable to be contained. They swiftly vanished into the chaos along with several dozen formidable beings. In that moment, as 3,000 great beings departed, the plaza finally returned to tranquility. Let us return, Tong Yi said as he led Hao Yin and Yao Qi back to the garden behind the grand hall. By the fish pond, however, they found no sign of Hong Jun. Only the six-eared figure meditating upon the 12th grade pure world white lotus. Hao Yin and Yao Qi, who had hoped to present treasures to the Venerable One, felt a tinge of disappointment as they gazed toward the rear of the Zixiao Palace. The forbidden area of the Taoist temple is perpetually shrouded in purple mist, accessible only to the master. In the absence of the master, one can be certain that they have ventured into the forbidden realm. Tong Yi followed their gaze towards the rear of the temple, a place he was already familiar with. During his first visit to the Purple Sky Palace, Hong Jun had been in seclusion there. As for what lay within, he was both curious and indifferent. He believed that if his master chose not to speak of it, there must be a significant reason behind it. Tong Yi firmly trusted that as long as he refrained from curiosity, he would not be ensnared by its mysteries. Consolidate your cultivation well. In 3,000 years, I shall take you to enjoy the delights of Western Kunlun, Tong Yi said to Hao Yin and Yao Qi before he turned to fly towards the scripture pavilion. The architecture of the Purple Sky Palace was abundant, and he could easily find a place to establish his own cave dwelling. Yet, he favored the scripture pavilion, for it was the birthplace of his dreams. However, after taking a few steps, an idea struck him. With a flick of his right index finger, a sphere of light shot forth from his hand, landing directly on the brow of the six-eared macaque. With a soft thud, the moment the sphere made contact, the aura emanating from the six-eared macaque surged dramatically. His cultivation level began to rise exponentially. It has finally borne fruit. Tong Yi nodded in satisfaction as he proceeded towards the scripture pavilion. The sphere of light had been obtained from the shattered Kunpeng, infused with the power of a peak golden immortal. He had always intended to gift it to the six-eared macaque, but his many responsibilities had led him to forget. Fortunately, it was not too late, as the six-eared macaque had just recently recultivated the Purple Sky Heart Sutra, reaching the heavenly, immortal realm. Is that it? Just like that, a breakthrough? Hao Yin and Yao Qi, still standing in place, were utterly dumbfounded. They watched in astonishment as the aura surrounding the six-eared macaque transformed. In the blink of an eye, he advanced from the initial stage of the heavenly immortal to the mid-stage, and his aura continued to escalate. All of this occurred merely from their senior brother's fingertip? How is this even possible? Chapter 117. The primordial slaying god spear, cast out for tribulation 2,000 years slipped by in the blink of an eye. Inside the scripture pavilion, the miniature Penglai island floated atop a mat. Atop one of the island's peaks, Tong Yi crouched, his gaze fixed intently on the five-colored furnace before him, anticipation etched across his face. Within the furnace, the nine heavens' true fire blazed fiercely, enveloping two beams of light that were in the final stages of fusion. One was the spearhead of the slaying god spear, and the other was the cosmic ruler. Over the past 3,000 years, Tong Yi had absorbed profound insights into the art of crafting artifacts, and he felt an overwhelming urge to create. After all, without skill, he would have never ventured into the realm of artifact crafting. Yet, now that he had attained mastery in this craft, not to create something would feel like a disservice to his own potential. Thus, he initially shattered the rare texts within the sutra repository, subsequently refining them into rubbings. Yet, he still felt unfulfilled. He turned his attention to the celestial measuring rod and the god-slaying spearhead. After all, one cannot solely rely on brute strength when traversing the world. Such an approach lacks grace. It is essential to possess a suitable weapon. He pondered, even the spearhead, though merely a remnant, possesses the rank of an innate spiritual treasure. What might be forged if it were to meld with the meritorious spiritual treasure of the celestial measuring rod? Thus, he commenced his experimentation. However, he soon discovered that even after achieving a high level of craftsmanship, the fusion of these two artifacts proved exceedingly arduous. At the onset, the god-slaying spearhead, imbued with a menacing aura, held the advantage. Formed from the primordial azure lotus stalk and previously wielded by the formidable Luo Ho, the spearhead, despite being just a fragment, was remarkably resilient. It sought to suppress the celestial measuring rod, intending to eradicate its sentience and transform it into its own shaft. Yet, the primordial celestial measuring rod was no less formidable. It was a manifestation of the fusion of merit and primordial energy, embodying the laws of measurement within the universe, capable of discerning right from wrong, good from evil. To it, the god-slaying spear's desire for coexistence seemed neutral. However, to attempt to consume its sentience was an audacious act, bordering on malevolence. Consequently, these two treasures, one an innate spiritual treasure and the other a meritorious spiritual treasure, clashed violently during their initial attempts at fusion, shattering numerous cauldrons in the process. This left Tong Yi bewildered, utterly at a loss as to the source of the problem. Adhering to the principle that practice substantiates theory, he continued his research. It was not until a millennium later that Tong Yi realized that without a high-grade artifact furnace, he could not withstand the fluctuations inherent in the artifact refinement process. Utilizing a common cauldron to fuse the god-slaying spear and the celestial measuring rod was nearly impossible. This revelation brought to mind the Qiankuan cauldron he had acquired from Nua's treasure mountain. Although he could not seize it, after all, she was his junior sister, he could replicate it. Upon reflection, he found himself lacking in certain materials. However, he had an abundance of others. He copied the blueprints of Nua's Qiankuan cauldron from the sutra repository, using the remnants of Fangzhong Island as the foundation. He supplemented it with some 9 heavens earth essence, felled primordial sandalwood from Ingzhou Island, and gathered some 3 light divine water from Penglai Island, thus assembling the 5 elemental treasures: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. All were refined using the true fire of the 9 heavens. After mixing the materials, he shaped the furnace's body, base, and lid, ultimately crafting a cauldron of postnatal treasure grade. He then proceeded to attempt the fusion of the god-slaying spearhead and the celestial measuring rod once more. Indeed, the process went much more smoothly this time. Regardless of the magnitude of the fluctuations generated, the furnace, composed of the 5 elemental properties, harmonized and counterbalanced each other. Boom. Shortly thereafter, a brilliant red and golden light emanated from the cauldron, culminating in their complete fusion. Simultaneously, a magnificent treasure aura suddenly emanated from the cauldron, so intense that it propelled the lid of the cauldron into the air, cleaving a distant mountain peak in twain. Tong Yi, filled with anticipation and trepidation, gazed into the cauldron. In a flash, before he could fully comprehend the scene, a long spear, approximately 7 feet 7 inches in length, entirely golden and adorned with crimson patterns, materialized before him. The spear exuded an imposing presence, yet its aura was oddly dualistic, radiating both overwhelming malice and noble righteousness. Upon its emergence, the spear's tip was aimed directly at Tong Yi's brow, the distance between them a mere foot. Concurrently, a force of judgment manifested from the spear, transforming into golden characters of good and red characters of evil, flickering incessantly, as if weighing Tong Yi's moral alignment. By heavens, is it to slay its master upon birth? Tong Yi chuckled in disbelief, raising an eyebrow as his right hand discreetly extended. Simultaneously, the system's attribute panel projected. Name: Hongming God-slaying spear grade. Restrictions? Details: the God-slaying spear, combined with the celestial measuring ruler, possesses the ability to discern good from evil. Should it penetrate, the soul will be annihilated, the act devoid of karmic consequence, ungraded. Upon reading the system's description, Tong Yi furrowed his brow slightly. With the grade represented as question marks, how could one ascertain whether this artifact was an advancement or a regression? Yet, it must be an improvement, otherwise, Why would it audaciously judge its master upon its arrival? Moreover, the aspect of killing without karmic repercussions was quite commendable. The ability to discern good and evil bore semblance to his own talent of eavesdropping on thoughts. Overall, it seemed promising. With this in mind, Tong Yi extended his right hand forward. In an instant, the god-slaying spear, which had been flickering with the duality of good and evil, trembled abruptly. It appeared as though Tong Yi had not made physical contact, yet the spear sensed a terrifying force of destruction enveloping the surrounding space. This force of annihilation was even more formidable and unreasonable than itself. Should it dare to act impulsively, it would be obliterated in the next moment. Upon realizing this, the god-slaying spear emitted a pleading hum, and the previously manifested character of evil vanished, leaving only the radiant character of good to flicker continuously. Among the many capricious spiritual artifacts I have encountered, you are certainly among the swiftest, Tong Yi remarked to the god-slaying spear, shaking his head in resignation. He reached out and firmly grasped the spear's shaft. Clang! Just then, a thunderous roar erupted, and Tong Yi looked up, his violet eyes shimmering. Above the Sutra repository, a mass of calamity clouds began to gather. Even from the distance of the Sutra repository and Penglai Island, one could sense the destructive aura of the impending tribulation. Oh, so this is what it means to be ungraded. Then you may as well venture forth to face your tribulation, Tong Yi declared without a moment's hesitation, casting the Hongmeng Shirshan spear from the ethereal confines of Penglai Island. With a mere flick of his wrist, he sent it soaring into the spacious plaza before the Zixiao Hall, a fitting arena for the impending tribulation. As for himself, he settled into a meditative posture, his consciousness descending into the depths of the system's realm. He had successfully comprehended and practiced the mastery of artifact crafting. With less than a millennium remaining until the banquet of Xikanlan, the time had come to delve into the long-untouched principles of the Path of Force. Chapter 118. The Pinnacle of the Six-Eared Xianxian. Yaoqi proposes a bet. What was that? Or has it erupted? Another heavenly tribulation? At the moment the thunderous roar erupted above the Zixiao Taoist temple, Hao Yin and the Yaoqi were jolted from their meditative states, their eyes drawn to the heavens. Particularly, the six-eared macaque turned pale with fright. 2 millennia prior, he had sensed a sudden divine nudge from his master, which had filled his mind with an overwhelming torrent of knowledge and insights, all pertaining to the elucidation of the Zixiao Heart Sutra. Initially astounded by his master's extraordinary abilities, he soon found himself in tears, lamenting that had he received such wisdom earlier, he would not have endured the arduous process of recultivation. For 3,000 years, under the tutelage of his master, he had been painstakingly reconstructing the Zixiao Heart Sutra, only to regain his celestial status after eons of toil. Yet, at this moment, with merely a flick of his master's finger, he sensed he could ascend directly to the golden immortal realm. Had that divine gesture come sooner, he would not have squandered 3 millennia. Unbeknownst to him, his master had completely forgotten about this particular matter. However, he soon became enraptured by the newfound insights. And after 2,000 years of absorption and digestion, the cultivation wisdom bestowed upon him by Tong Yi had elevated his standing from the early stages of the celestial realm to the pinnacle of the Xianxian, standing merely a step away from the golden immortal. The six-eared macaque also sensed that should he break through this bottleneck, he might soon undergo his own transformation. Thus, when the thunderclap resonated, the sheer terror it instilled was palpable. He was far from prepared for such a trial. Hao Yin and Yaoqi instinctively assumed that it was the six-eared who was about to face the tribulation. Their forms materialized in the garden, astonished to discover that the six-eared had indeed reached the Xianxian level, yet it was not he who was to undergo tribulation. Turning their gazes, they soon realized that the ominous storm clouds loomed above the scripture pavilion. I knew it. How could I possibly be ready for tribulation? The realization struck him. It was his master who was to confront the tribulation, not himself. The six-eared macaque released a heavy sigh, his tense form relaxing, and murmured with a hint of resentment. This troublesome master of mine, always instilling fear. Being his disciple is truly a daunting task. What, brother, have you not already attained sanctity? Must you still face tribulation? As the celestial pool of Hao Yin reacted promptly, the notion of six-ear undergoing tribulation seemed entirely plausible. However, wasn't it peculiar that their senior brother had already attained the sanctified body? Did the will of the heavenly Tao lose its senses? What nonsense is this? My master has achieved sanctification? Six-ear's eyes widened in disbelief, his countenance reflecting utter incredulity. He felt as though he had missed a significant event. After all, thousands of years prior, his master required considerable effort to subdue Xianyin. How could it be that after over 5 millennia of cultivation, his master had reached sanctification? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Observing Six-ear's expression, Hao Yin sighed. They too were incredulous. Yet the events surrounding Hongyun and the River of the Nether, Not to mention the three pure ones leading the myriad powerful beings, seemed irrefutable. How could there be any doubt? You still do not comprehend your master. There is no need for such alarm. Consider this. If your master had not attained sanctification, how could a mere touch from him propel your cultivation speed to such terrifying heights? Hao Yin gently patted Six Year's shoulder, speaking with an air of wisdom. Do not imitate your senior brother. Your attempts are utterly lacking. Yao Qi interjected, hands on her hips, reproaching him. The demeanor of the eldest brother is not so easily replicated. To mimic him is to commit an act of desecration. Witnessing this exchange, Six Year shook his head internally. These two uncles were hopelessly enamored. It was unclear what enchantment their master had cast upon them. One idolized his master to the point of imitation, while the other revered him to the extent of being unable to tolerate any perceived disrespect. Moreover, the monumental event of their master's tribulation was met with their playful bickering over trivial matters. Alas, within the entire Zixiao Palace, apart from the Grand Master, I am the only rational individual. Contemplating this, Six Year timidly suggested to Hao Yin and Yao Qi, perhaps we should go see our master. I worry about his tribulation. Hao Yin shook his head with a sigh. You still do not understand your master. Yao Qi delivered a swift kick, exclaiming, stop trying to imitate. At that moment, a sudden sound of something piercing through the air drew the attention of the three. They turned to follow the sound, witnessing a golden and red streak of light emerging from the scripture pavilion, landing upon the square. To their astonishment, as that streak of light surged forth, the ominous clouds that had gathered above the pavilion began to swirl rapidly, swiftly appearing above the square and coalescing into tribulation thunder. In an instant, the crackling sounds of arcs of electricity resonated throughout the square. What is happening? The three exchanged bewildered glances, their faces a portrait of confusion. They immediately soared into the air, alighting upon the eaves of the Zixiao Hall. It was at this moment that they finally beheld the true visage of the tribulation bearer. What could this possibly be? Such a terrifying aura emanates, sending shivers down my spine upon a mere sweep of my consciousness. Lu Er, with all his fur bristling, hides behind Hao Tian, who also wears an expression of fear, his eyes reflecting a hint of confusion. Why does he find this object somewhat familiar, yet utterly foreign? Is this the legendary item? He muses. You have not misidentified it. This must be my senior brother who has refined the celestial measuring ruler once more. Yao Qi interjects with unwavering conviction. Her face is alight with joy as she gazes at the Hongming god-slaying spear, her voice rife with admiration. Senior brother is truly remarkable. He has once again grasped the art of weapon crafting. Moreover, he has even managed to recreate the celestial measuring ruler. His mastery in this craft must be formidable. Hearing this, Hao Tian is left speechless. While he admires his senior brother, he sees himself as a follower, a figure to emulate, unlike Yao Qi, who idolizes him indiscriminately. Mastery in weapon crafting? How could that be possible? For many years, the two celestial youths have assisted their master, frequently engaging in menial tasks. Thus, they have acquired knowledge in weapon crafting, alchemy, and formations, even reaching minor accomplishments. However, this is attributed to the teachings of their master and years of accumulation. It is evident that their senior brother has never delved into weapon crafting before. He must have only recently begun to learn. 2,000 years, and he achieves mastery in weapon crafting? That is implausible. Lu Er, the six-eared macaque, shares the same skepticism, rummaging through fragmented memories. He recalls his past incarnation as the chaotic ape, who only knew how to seize treasures through brute force. What does he know of weapon crafting? 2,000 years to achieve mastery? This uncle is truly delusional, idolizing our master to such an extent. Not convinced. Only treasures that are forged require tribulation. This item, resembling the celestial measuring ruler, has emerged from the sutra repository. It must have been crafted by our senior brother. Let us wager, once it undergoes tribulation, we shall see how many prohibitions it possesses, revealing the true extent of our senior brother's crafting abilities. Yao Qi declared, her expression resolute as she addressed Hao Tian and Lu Er. She would not permit anyone to cast doubt upon her senior brother. Chapter 119, The Path of Power. Ever present a wager? What are we betting on? Hao Tian glanced at the spear beneath the tribulation clouds. Although he found some merit in Yao Qi's assertion, he still believed that this spear was not the celestial measuring ruler, but rather an imitation crafted by his senior brother. He trusts that his senior brother has grasped the art of weapon crafting, yet he remains firm in his belief that mastery is utterly unattainable. Let us wager on the number of prohibitions of this spear. I bet it possesses 80 or 92 innate prohibitions. If I win, all the trifling tasks in the dojo will henceforth be yours to handle. Yao Qi tilted her head back, exuding an air of confidence. In her eyes, victory was assured. Her senior brother was indeed the finest. This spear must surely be a reimagined version of the celestial measuring rod. Excellent. I wager there are at most 54 prohibitions. 54. An innate treasure. This is already quite outrageous. After all, among the formidable beings of the heavens, few possess innate treasures. The majority are merely spiritual treasures. This observation holds true even more so after the division of treasures by the venerable elder during a time of greater scarcity. Once they had spoken, they turned to Lu'er. What about you? Me? Lu'er pointed at himself, pondering the nature of this wager. Given his lineage and cultivation level, should he involve himself, he would inevitably bear the brunt of any tasks, regardless of the outcome, wouldn't he? Yet, confronted with the unwavering gaze of his two esteemed senior uncles, Lu'er, feeling helpless, nodded. I stand with Uncle Haoyan. Indeed, he recognized the formidable prowess of his master. Yet it should not reach such transcendent heights. Furthermore, whether he won or lost, defeat seemed inevitable. Why not align with Uncle Haoyan? Should he triumph over Aunt Yaoqi, it would still be a loss. However, if he lost alongside Uncle Haoyan, perhaps he could enlist his help with the chores. During his time at the Zhixiao Palace, he had discerned the hierarchy. The Grand Master was above the Master, who was above Aunt Yaoqi, who was above Uncle Haoyan, who was above himself. You wretched brat. So disloyal. To lack faith in your own master. Yaoqi scolded Lu'er, her lips curling in disdain. However, her youthful visage, appearing no older than 4 or 5, failed to intimidate anyone. Lu'er feigned fear, casually sitting on the eaves, his gaze intensely fixed upon the square. He too was on the verge of facing tribulation, and this moment could serve as a valuable reference. Boom. At that instant, the first bolt of tribulation lightning coalesced and crashed down. In the Sutra Pavilion on Panglai Island, Tong Yi sat cross-legged, his consciousness directly engaging with the luminous orb of comprehension pertaining to the path of force. He paid no heed to the Hongmeng god-slaying spear. In his view, the system had described that artifact in such an extraordinary manner. It was essentially a fusion of the celestial measuring rod and the god-slaying spear. What then was there to fear? He had personally experienced the heavenly tribulation, and it was merely that, a challenge that could not contend with the might of the Hongmeng god-slaying spear. Furthermore, if he could not even withstand the heavenly tribulation, then what use was there for such a trifling Hongmeng god-slaying spear? As he delved into the principles of force, he found himself utterly immersed in the experience. Boom. With an eruption of insights flooding his consciousness, he was engulfed in a torrent of understanding. Tong Yi trembled all over, overwhelmed by an unprecedented sensation that permeated his entire being and spirit. In this realm of enlightenment, he witnessed the infinite transformations of the law of force. A sudden clarity dawned upon him. Force is omnipresent. From the colossal collisions of celestial bodies to the minuscule interactions between particles, every manifestation of force harbors boundless mysteries. What is force? It encompasses, but is not limited to, physical strength, magical power, spiritual energy, and various other forms of power. From the most fundamental acts of walking and flying to the casting of spells, divine abilities, and spiritual treasures, each expression is a condensation, guidance, and release of celestial energy, all governed by the principles of the law of force. The law of force resembles an invisible net intricately woven into every corner of the primordial world. For instance, it is closely intertwined with the laws of space. As any exertion of force requires space as a medium for manipulation post-release, it is also related to the laws of time. For the effects and changes of any force may evolve with the passage of time. Tong Yi comprehended this. He mused that he was not merely in the primordial realm. As he pondered, it seemed he had ventured into the realm of science. In summary, through his insights, he recognized the law of force as a fundamental principle, interwoven and influencing other great laws. His consciousness ebbed and flowed with the oscillations of these forces, gradually touching upon a method of power utilization that transcended conventional understanding. Thus, he finally stepped onto the threshold of the path of force, formally grasping the rudiments of the law of force and glimpsing a mere fragment of its vast domain. Similar to other laws, the law of force encompasses 4 realms: entry, minor achievement, major achievement, and perfection. Presently, he had merely entered. With this realization, he could amplify the potency of all his physical strength, primordial spirit energy, and law-based power, doubling the efficacy of each force he wielded, thus overpowering any other force of the same realm. Even against the forces of time and space, as long as the opponent had merely entered, he could crush them with a single strike. The realm of minor achievement bears little distinction from entry, yet it allows one to transcend and overpower any law. For instance, if he were to encounter Xianming in the ice and snow world governed by 4 major laws, even with only a minor achievement in the law of force, he could still shatter it with a single punch. This bears a remarkable resemblance to his system. However, the major achievement in the law of force is altogether different. Upon reaching this realm, he could effortlessly create small worlds, each a complete ecosystem where 3,000 laws coexist, nurturing all beings and spirits rather than a singular law. Moreover, he could alter the rules of other small worlds at will. As for the major achievement of the law of force, it requires no further explanation. It is akin to the existence of the primordial deity Pangu. Crushing through the myriad paths, he opened up the vast primordial world. A millennium passed in the blink of an eye. The law of power. Indeed, it was invincible. As he fully absorbed these insights, Tong Yi finally opened his eyes, revealing the astonishment within. He understood that the path of power was extraordinarily formidable, yet he had not anticipated that even a minor accomplishment could nearly rival his own system. It was no wonder that the path could not accommodate the law of power, which had led to the design of 3,000 chaotic demon gods to besiege Pangu. As he thoroughly digested these revelations, his entire aura became remarkably tranquil. Unlike before, when he had shielded himself from the world's mysteries with the laws of time and space, he now appeared as ordinary as any mortal. He seemed to merge with the world, akin to the great Taoist Hongjun, blending with the essence of heaven and earth, and mingling with the dust of light. This signified his unprecedented mastery over power. A millennium had passed. Was that spear still struggling to transcend its calamity? With a joyful heart, Tong Yi pondered the law of power. In a single stride, he found himself hovering above the Zixiao Palace. Chapter 120. Allowing the six-eared to experience the lower realm, the god-slaying spear successfully transcends its calamity. 1,000 years had elapsed. Was it still undergoing tribulation? How many levels had it reached? Tong Yi landed beside Hao Yin and the others, inquiring softly. When he had undergone his tribulation, it had been swift. He shattered the tribulation lightning with a mere punch if it became unbearable. Thus, he found it somewhat absurd that the Hongming god-slaying spear had taken a millennium for its tribulation. However, upon seeing the tribulation manifesting in purple, he realized that this trial was indeed formidable. The sudden voice startled Hao Yin and his companions. They turned to find their senior brother had appeared beside them unbeknownst to them. It was eerie how silently he had arrived. In their spiritual perception, there had been no presence beside them at all, only visible to the naked eye. If he remained silent, they felt no trace of disturbance. Such a scene caused a shiver in the hearts of Hao Yin and Yao Qi. Over the years of diligent cultivation, following the third sermon, their progress had surged, reaching the pinnacle of Deluo, on the verge of becoming quasi-saints. Yet, in the presence of their senior brother, they sensed the chasm between them widening. That was one thing. Now, the sensation he imparted was akin to when they stood before their master. Curiosity stirred within them. Before his seclusion, their senior brother had achieved physical sanctity, yet he now exuded an aura that felt far beyond that. Could it be that in these 3,000 years, his cultivation had soared once more? Was there something beyond the realm of sainthood? With this thought, the two celestial youths gasped in shock. It wouldn't be long before their senior brother surpassed their master, would it? Yao Qi felt bewildered, reflecting on the extraordinary being she had brought back all those years ago. Nevertheless, they stifled the astonishment within their hearts. Hao Tian responded earnestly, "Senior brother, your weapon has already endured 48 tribulations of thunder. It is now at the final stage of the 7th cycle, a total of 49. As he spoke, his heart brimmed with admiration and awe for his senior brother. He was genuinely impressed. Initially, he had believed that the spear forged by his senior brother would only withstand 35 tribulations at most, qualifying it as a postnatal treasure. However, over the course of a millennium, with each purple bolt of thunder that struck, reality had proven otherwise. This spear, it seemed, was destined to be classified as a congenital treasure. In other words, his esteemed senior brother had crafted a congenital treasure using the techniques of postnatal weapon forging. This revelation left Hao Tian both stunned and somewhat disheartened, for he had lost a bet to Yao Qi henceforth. Yao Qi could afford to be lazy regarding the myriad affairs of the Zixiao Palace. Seeing Hao Tian's expression, Yao Qi tilted her head and smiled at Tong Yi, saying, "Senior brother, we wagered 1,000 years ago. I asserted that the treasures you forged would undoubtedly surpass postnatal treasures, yet they did not believe me. Your disciple seems to harbor doubts about your abilities." Upon hearing this, Tong Yi turned to look at Lu Er, observing the aura surrounding him. Tong Yi couldn't help but furrow his brow. "Why are you only at the pinnacle of the profound immortal stage? Are you afraid of the tribulations?" Lu Er, realizing his thoughts had been discerned, trembled involuntarily. He quickly bowed, his voice quavering, "Master, I was wrong. I wasted your guidance." Hao Tian and Yao Qi exchanged glances, astonishment flickering in their eyes. They had initially thought that Lu Er's progress from celestial immortal to the pinnacle of profound immortal in 2,000 years was already extraordinary. Yet now, hearing their senior brother, it seemed Lu Er was hesitant to break through due to his fear of tribulations. Did this imply that the subtle guidance their senior brother had provided 3,000 years ago could have enabled Lu Er to ascend to the golden immortal stage? This thought stirred a sense of impulse within them, wishing that their senior brother might bestow upon them a similar opportunity, allowing them to directly advance to the quasi-saint level. However, just as this notion took root, they were met with their senior brother's admonishing voice. Have you two not noticed his hesitance, his unstable mindset, and lack of both wisdom and courage, and yet you wish to follow in his folly? Hao Tian lowered his head, too intimidated to speak. Yao Qi merely stuck out her tongue. It seemed their senior brother was increasingly resembling an elder, ignoring the two lively spirits. He turned his gaze back to Lu Er, feeling a sense of helplessness. He suddenly realized that Lu Er could not be blamed for this predicament. The infusion of insights was a treasure for someone like him, who had lived two lives. After all, what hardship could compare to his previous existence? Yet for Lu Er, whose mind was still tender, the forced infusion of insights, although devoid of aftereffects, was akin to hastening the growth of seedlings. Recalling the time he had boldly confronted Jie Yin and Zhuan Ti when they had seized him, he had once dared to bare his teeth at them. But now, yet he dared not confront the tribulation of heaven, shrinking back in trepidation. Ultimately, it was his own fault for taking things for granted. Soon, you shall descend to the mortal realm with me. Afterward, you will wander through the vast wilderness alone, and not return to the Purple Cloud Palace until you attain the status of a Tai Golden Immortal. Tong Yi's voice was solemn as he addressed Lu Er. Upon hearing this, Lu Er trembled, raising his gaze to Tong Yi with reddened eyes. Does master no longer want me? Tong Yi, unmoved by pity, replied, this shall be the last guidance I provide you, a means for your survival. With that, he pointed with his right hand, and another stream of light descended into Lu Er's brow. It was the initial insight into the spatial laws obtained from shattering the split treasure rock. This knowledge could not be accumulated nor applied to oneself, but it could be bestowed upon his disciple. With the bloodline of the Kunping and the understanding of spatial laws, it seemed that survival in the wilderness would not pose a challenge. Lu Er stiffened, his eyes shining with delight. This sensation, it was akin to 3,000 years ago, when his mind was suddenly flooded with insights and knowledge. The difference was that the last experience pertained to the path of cultivation, whereas this time, it was an introduction to the spatial laws. Although merely an introduction, Lu Er cherished it like a treasure, his heart brimming with excitement. Initially, he had felt despondent at Master S's command to venture into the mortal realm, but now he could not suppress a smile. Thank you, Master. I shall certainly not disappoint your expectations. I will sharpen my mind and strive to reach the Tai Golden Immortal rank, and return to express my gratitude. Lu Er, the macaque, ceased his pleas and instead prostrated himself in gratitude, exclaiming loudly. Observing Lu Er's swift transformation, Hao Yin and the Yao Qi were completely taken aback. They had intended to speak a few words to Lu Er, for this little monkey was quite endearing, reminiscent of their elder brother before he took shape. They felt a pang of reluctance at the thought of him embarking on this solitary journey. Yet now, they had not even managed to utter a word before this little monkey, brimming with excitement, was eager to descend to the mortal realm. All this change stemmed from the moment their elder brother had tapped Lu Er's brow once more, igniting an insatiable curiosity within them. What could it possibly feel like to be tapped? Boom. At that instant, a thunderous clap erupted from the distant square, abruptly disrupting the thoughts of the two celestial youths. They turned to look and beheld the final purple tribulation lightning descending, only to be pierced and shattered by a distinctly golden-red spear aura. In the next moment, the tribulation dissipated, and the originally dark clouds began to change color, transforming into a brilliant gold. Simultaneously, golden rain poured down in abundance, all directed towards the Hongmeng God-slaying spear. Buzz. As it absorbed all the rain, intricate patterns of prohibitions blossomed upon the Hongmeng God-slaying spear, appearing and vanishing intermittently. Hao Yin and Yao Qi widened their eyes, hastily extending their small hands, counting the number of prohibition patterns. Soon, a conclusion has been reached. Chapter 121, the feast commences. Upon its onset, gifts are bestowed. The vast expanse of the primordial land, once desolate and scarcely visited, has recently witnessed an influx of countless figures. They arrive from all directions, some soaring through the clouds, others riding upon mythical beasts. Their singular aim is evident. In the snow-capped western Kunlun, a crescent-shaped lake is nestled atop the mountains. The water glistens with a tranquil emerald hue, while the surrounding slopes are adorned with towering spruce trees, cascading endlessly. At the lake's center, magnificent structures emerge, palatial complexes enveloped in ethereal mist, epitomizing a realm of enchantment. This is the sacred abode of the Queen Mother of the West, the Kunlun Heavenly Pool. Swiftly, figures descend from the heavens, landing gracefully before the gates where the Eastern Prince and the Queen Mother of the West await. Among them are esteemed listeners from the Purple Cloud's Palace, who have long anticipated this banquet since the second sermon. Initially, they presumed that with the emergence of the sage, the feast would be rendered impossible. Yet, upon returning from the Purple Cloud's palace 3 millennia ago, invitations were dispatched by the Eastern Prince and the Queen Mother, heralding news that captivated the celestial beings. The Eastern Prince has indeed forged a connection with the sage. In addition to the listeners from the Purple Cloud's palace, numerous cultivators and even reclusive masters have gathered, albeit with a sense of skepticism. After all, the ascension of Hangjun to sagehood had been a momentous event, heralded to the world with blessings. The sudden emergence of another sage raised doubts among those who had never set foot in the Purple Cloud's palace. Suddenly, 3 wisps of pure energy appeared on the horizon, gliding swiftly like lightning, arriving above the dwelling in an instant. We bow to the 3 pure ones. In that moment, all the great beings gathered at the gates, including the Eastern Prince and the Queen Mother, offered their reverence to the 3 pure ones. Today was unlike any other. Though they addressed them as friends, their demeanor was imbued with humility, for these were disciples of the sage. Greetings to you, esteemed friends, Laozi and Yuanshi descended. Acknowledging the gathering with a slight bow, Tong Tian landed directly beside the Eastern Prince, craning his neck to survey the surroundings and inquiring, Eastern Prince, has my elder brother arrived? Laozi and Yuanshi turned their gaze toward him, their eyes reflecting hope. The Eastern Prince replied with a smile, the sage has yet to arrive. But the presence of the 3 esteemed friends has already illuminated this humble abode. Shall we not take our seats? A fleeting shadow of disappointment crossed the eyes of the 3 pure ones, especially Laozi. Since returning to the dwelling 3 millennia ago, he often pondered the profound essence of Tao as articulated by his elder brother, aspiring to grasp its meaning. Alas, 3,000 years have passed, and he remains in a state of confusion. Today, I have come with a specific purpose, to inquire if I might seize this opportunity to ask the esteemed master brother about the deeper meaning of morality. Though a sense of disappointment lingers in my heart, the 3 of them slightly nod, stepping through the grand entrance, guided by the West Queen Mother to take their seats. Your Majesty, do you believe the sage will acquiesce to our course of action today? Upon witnessing the 3 pure ones enter, an emaciated elder beside the Eastern King inquired. His name was Huai Mu Dao Ran, a being of wood who, after attaining spiritual awareness, cultivated himself to immortality and had accompanied the Eastern King for a considerable time. Upon hearing his words, the myriad figures present, who were also there to receive guests, displayed expressions of apprehension. Although the Eastern King had been conferred the title of the foremost male immortal by the Grand Master Hangjun, why did they follow him without cause? It was precisely because he had presented them with an irresistible temptation. Today, the success of their plans hinged upon the will of the Hunyuan sage. However, the Eastern King bestowed upon them a reassuring glance, exuding confidence as he declared, there is no need for concern. After today, the vastness of the universe will be ours to share equally. We stand under the banner of the sage. How could he refuse us? At that moment, they sensed an approaching aura, causing them to lift their gazes in unison. In the next instant, all present were momentarily taken aback. 2 figures had appeared in the sky, quietly surveying them. What struck terror into their hearts was the undeniable sensation that only one entity was present within their consciousness. Yet, this was of little consequence. What truly mattered was that the arrival was none other than the sage they had just been discussing. Such a revelation implied that their prior conversation had been overheard by the sage. We bow before the sage. We pay our respects to the Yaoqi fairy. The Eastern King quickly regained his composure, suppressing the fear within as he hurriedly offered his salutation. He reassured himself that he was merely frightening himself. The sage's presence at the banquet already spoke volumes. Even if he had heard their discourse, what of it? The others, upon hearing his words, swiftly emerged from their shock, following suit to bow towards the heavens. No need for excessive formalities, Tong Yi said, descending with the Yaoqi, his expression unperturbed. Meanwhile, the Yaoqi observed her surroundings with curious, glistening eyes, contemplating how she would boast about this experience to Hao Yin upon their return. As for Hao Yin's absence, it was, of course, due to his loss in a wager. After the long spear's tribulation, it had emerged adorned with an impressive 72 innate divine patterns, truly an extraordinary treasure. Thus, they had brought Lu Er down to the mortal realm, leaving poor Hao Yin behind to tidy up the Zixiao Palace. As for Lu Er, once he descended from the Mount of Unfathomable, he was carelessly cast out by Tong Yi to fend for himself. Whoosh, whoosh. Oh, Master Brother, you have finally arrived. Tong Tian has missed you dearly. Nuwa pays a visit to her esteemed senior brother. The figures of Jane and Junti have long awaited his presence. Upon hearing the movement at the grand entrance, countless silhouettes emerged from the cave abode, bowing in reverence. Leading them were the 3 pure ones, Nuwa, Jane, and Junti. Although they were ostensibly gathered for a feast at the Western Kunlun, their thoughts were entirely focused on the arrival of the primordial saint. With the saint's descent, how could they remain indoors? Enough with the formalities. With so many present, let us proceed inside and commence the festivities. Without a hint of hesitation, Tong Yi smiled at the three pure ones and, with a graceful wave of his sleeve, stepped through the grand doorway. Soon, the assembly entered a resplendent palace adorned in gold and jade. Surrounded by the crowd, Tong Yi took his place on the throne, with Dong Wang Gong and Shi Wang Mu flanking him. To pay homage to the saint, we present this as a celebratory gift for his attainment of enlightenment. Before Tong Yi could even settle into his seat, and while the others had yet to find their places, the lantern-bearing Taoist approached the center of the hall, presenting a gift box with a bow. At this sight, an eerie silence enveloped the hall for a moment. Everyone suddenly awakened from their reverie. They rose once more, rummaging through their sleeves, and with a gust of wind at their feet, advanced toward the center of the hall. Observing this, Dong Wang Gong felt a mix of disdain and fury. The rightful host had yet to present his gifts. Why were they so eager? Yet he acted swiftly. Being the closest to Tong Yi, he exchanged glances with Shi Wang Mu, and together they obstructed the throng, holding aloft two gift boxes, bowing deeply as they proclaimed, "We, the two of us, present this humble offering to honor the saint." In chapter 122, "If the saint refuses my gift, I shall perish." Dong Wang Gong offered 1,000 drops of the divine three-light sacred water to celebrate the saint's sanctification. Shi Wang Mu gifted a primordial peach tree of the highest quality to commemorate the saint's attainment of Tao fruit. Due to the lack of decorum displayed by the lantern-bearing Taoist, the initial clamor triggered by his early gift-giving was swiftly quelled by the resounding calls from Dong Wang Gong and Shi Wang Mu, plunging the hall into silence. The mighty beings who were still rummaging within their garments for gifts found themselves frozen in place, eyes wide with disbelief, gazing at Dong Wang Gong and Shi Wang Mu. What had they just heard? 1,000 drops of the three-light sacred water? Unbelievable. And they had also directly offered one of the top 10 primordial spiritual roots, the peach tree. Had these two lost their minds? The three-light sacred water was the paramount healing elixir of the primordial realm. A single drop could mend any physical or spiritual injury. Yet, Dong Wang Gong had presented 1,000 drops? How affluent was this fellow? Furthermore, if memory served correctly, the peach tree was a treasure obtained by Shi Wang Mu from the treasure rock. Not only was it exceedingly rare across the heavens, but it also possessed the ability to extend one's lifespan. Moreover, within the Pan Tao tree lies the highest tier, a fruit-bearing tree that ripens once every 9,000 years. It is essential to understand that there is not merely one Pan Tao tree. There are three distinct tiers. Namely, the one that bears fruit every 3,000 years, which grants immortality with a single bite, the one that bears fruit every 6,000 years, which bestows eternal life and significantly extends one's lifespan, and the one that bears fruit every 9,000 years, which offers the extraordinary boon of longevity equal to that of heaven and earth, and the sun and moon. Not only does it elevate one to the realm of the golden immortal, but even the most powerful beings can enhance their cultivation by partaking of its fruit. Such an extraordinary and precious innate spiritual root. How could the Queen Mother of the West not cherish it, and instead hastily present it to the sage of Hunyuan? Instantly, all the mighty beings were filled with indignation towards the Eastern King and the Queen Mother of the West. What were these two thinking? Had they lost their minds? With such reckless abandon, how could they possibly present the carefully chosen gifts they had prepared for so long? Did they expect them to offer their own accompanying treasures to the sage as a show of sincerity? In that moment, some mighty beings began to retract their hands from their gifts, shifting instead to scratch their heads, slowly retreating and returning to their seats with bowed heads. With these two gifts already presented, what more could they possibly offer without losing face? At this juncture, Tong Yi gazed at the Eastern King and the Queen Mother of the West, momentarily taken aback. What are you two doing? Was it not agreed that we would convene a banquet to discuss the joint management of the celestial path? Why this sudden gift-giving? I cannot accept your offerings. Tong Yi gestured dismissively at the two, his tone leaving no room for argument. Observing this scene, the Eastern King and the Queen Mother of the West exchanged a brief glance of surprise. After which the Eastern King spoke again. The ascension of a sage is a momentous occasion for all under heaven. Today, the sage descends upon the Western Kunlun, and our gifts are merely a token of our goodwill. Should the sage refuse, I shall take my own life right here. The Eastern King had intentionally arranged this banquet for a singular purpose. If the sage would not accept the gifts, how could he dare to proceed? Upon finishing his words, he truly held the gift box and prepared to dash headlong towards Tong Yi's seat. Witnessing such a spectacle, all the mighty beings were left in a state of bewilderment. The guests from Zixiao could not help but glance towards the direction of Jane and Juanti. Why did this scene seem so familiar? Good heavens! The Eastern King had actually learned this tactic from the Western school of Buddhism. Feeling the collective gaze upon him, Jane, seated in the front row, was equally perplexed. The two sages exchanged silent looks, their expressions revealing their disbelief. Is this the extent of shamelessness in contemporary society? Must everything be imitated? Furthermore, we strive desperately for opportunities. While you, Eastern King, resort to such extremes merely to present a gift. Is it truly necessary? And as for you, young man, you are no exception. Only weeping and wailing, devoid of even a single tear, displaying a complete lack of acting prowess. Reflecting on this, the two exchanged slight shakes of their heads, their faces etched with disdain. Their demeanor and gestures mirrored the earlier antics witnessed at the Zixiao Palace, which had prompted disapproval from the assembled 3,000 mighty beings. Alas, it is what it is. Given the circumstances, I shall accept this for now, sighed Tong Yi, seated upon the main throne, feeling quite reluctant to intervene. Upon hearing these words, the Eastern King halted his movements, inwardly relieved, realizing that had he delayed a moment longer, a collision would have been inevitable. Nevertheless, at least the gifts had been presented. He hastily rose, taking the gift box from the Western Queen Mother, intending to present it before Tong Yi. However, he was met with Yao Qi, who stood up first to accept the gift box from his hands, her expression betraying neither joy nor anger. Observing this, the Eastern King quickly grasped the situation. He still possessed some discernment. The arrival of the sage was accompanied by Yao Qi, after all. Was she not meant to receive the gifts? After receiving the two gift boxes, Yao Qi returned to her seat beside Tong Yi, appearing calm and composed. Yet her heart brimmed with elation. Earlier on their journey, her senior brother had informed her that during this banquet, should anyone present gifts, she was to accept them all, regardless of quantity, and share them with Hao Yin. Yao Qi had initially thought it would take some time before gifts would be offered, but to her surprise, as soon as she settled down, someone had already come forth with gifts of such exquisite quality. At this moment, she maintained a facade of tranquility while internally deliberating which of the two gift boxes would be more suitable for Hao Yin. Perhaps they could draw lots? No rush, no rush. There were still many gifts to come. Particularly curious was what the Radiant Lamp Taoist had brought, as he was the first to step forward with such confidence, undoubtedly presenting something of great value. As for the others, there was no need for further formality. Let us all take our seats, for this is a banquet, and there is no need for such restraint. Just then, Tong Yi's voice rang out, interrupting Yao Qi's thoughts. She blinked, conceding that receiving two gifts without any prior effort was already quite fortunate. Upon hearing this, the previously awkward mighty beings swiftly descended the steps, returning to their seats, including the Radiant Lamp Taoist, who departed with remarkable speed. The Eastern King, however, was momentarily taken aback. Soon after, he exchanged a knowing glance with Yao Qi, silently resolving that once the banquet concluded, he would collect gifts from the others and present them all to her. Indeed, this must have been the sage's intention. Following this minor farce, the banquet officially commenced. One by one, elegantly adorned maidens of extraordinary beauty entered through the grand doors, bearing celestial fruits and wines, as well as delectable dishes, distributing them to all the mighty beings present. Shortly thereafter, the Eastern King lifted his flute, and after a melodic performance, celestial music filled the air. A multitude of celestial maidens, adorned in vibrant garments, entered the grand hall and began to gracefully dance upon the open space at its center. Tong Yi, unabashed, having traversed through time, had dedicated himself to relentless cultivation. Was he not entitled to relish such moments? The music played on, and the dance continued. The powerful beings within the hall observed this scene and gradually began to loosen their restraints. Even the saints, exhibiting such abandon, rendered it unnecessary for the others to maintain their decorum. As the revelry progressed, the Eastern King gestured for the maidens to withdraw. He lifted his wine cup, rose from his seat, and respectfully bowed to Tong Yi, stating, "Saint, concerning the governance of the celestial path, I have pondered for millennia and have a proposal that I implore you to consider." "Oh, have you finally reached your limit?" Tong Yi replied, taking a sip of the celestial wine with a smile. The numerous powers present immediately pricked up their ears, directing their attention towards the Eastern King. At that moment, even the most oblivious understood that the Eastern King had ulterior motives for this banquet. "I wish to establish a celestial court in the heavenly realm," he declared, his demeanor resolute as he faced the multitude of scrutinizing gazes. "To manage the celestial path, I seek permission to cultivate and create a celestial court." As these words resonated throughout the hall, an immediate silence fell, enveloping the atmosphere in a thick tension. All present, powerful beings of considerable renown, underwent profound changes in expression, their pupils constricting as enlightenment dawned upon them. They finally grasped the purpose behind the Eastern King's elaborate banquet, the summons of the saint, and the generous offerings. It became clear that he harbored ambitions of seizing control of the heavenly realm to establish a celestial court. It is important to note that although he and the Western Queen were conferred titles as the foremost celestial beings in the Purple Cloud Hall by the Tao Ancestor, Such distinctions were merely nominal, lacking substantive authority. While all revered the Tao ancestor, their respect for these two celestial figures extended only so far. However, should the Eastern King and the Western Queen succeed in founding a celestial court, the implications would be entirely different. This endeavor would delve into the enigmatic realm of fate, a concept that all celestial beings coveted. Fate, often described as an abstract entity, is indeed a tangible presence. Every individual's existence is intricately linked to their fate. Take the three pure ones, for instance. They are manifestations of Pangu's primordial spirit, and from the moment of their emergence, they bore immense fortune. Those blessed with abundant fate not only experience enhanced cultivation and smoother comprehension of the Tao's principles, but may even serendipitously discover treasures during their travels. In essence, possessing fate grants one the favor of the celestial order, even bestowing a sense of preference. Thus, it becomes evident why fate is so cherished among the powerful. However, acquiring it is a convoluted endeavor, fraught with difficulties. One must align with the celestial order and engage in acts that benefit all beings. The Saint's dissemination of the Tao to countless souls is, in itself, a manifestation of such celestial favor. In the pursuit of innate treasures, acquiring such items can indeed enhance one's fortune. However, these endeavors are fraught with difficulty. Thus, there remains one final option: to establish a formidable faction and attract celestial beings. The greater the number of celestial beings, the more the collective fortune of the faction will coalesce, benefiting all involved. The founder of this faction will be imbued with a profound prosperity. Examining history as a mirror reveals the cyclical nature of rise and fall. This method has already been tested by predecessors and has proven effective. For instance, during the primordial era, the three divine beast clans, the dragon, the Qilin, and the phoenix, were said to be the sovereigns of 3,000 aquatic clans, 3,000 terrestrial beasts, and 3,000 avian clans. The ancestral dragons, primordial Qilin, and original phoenix, by gathering the fortunes of their subordinate clans, strengthened their own. This brought them to the zenith of power. Yet, internal strife among the three divine beast clans led to untold suffering, ultimately defying the natural order, resulting in their fortunes collapsing and their disappearance from history. Consider also the Witch clan. The 12 ancestral witches established 12 tribes, each encompassing numerous greater and lesser witch clans throughout the vast wilderness. It can be asserted that the current fortunes of the Witch clan are unrivaled. The cultivation of the 12 ancestral witches has surged, each attaining a near-divine physical form. A sight to behold. These examples are evident, illustrating that the acquisition of fortune is not without means. However, while methods exist, emulating them poses significant challenges. The Witch clan thrives through the propagation of their bloodline. How can others emulate this? By conquering other races? Following the great calamity of Long Han, the strengths of all have leveled. Races without ancestral beings, upon conquering others, can only claim a modicum of fortune. Those with ancestral beings, should they triumph, fare well. But should they falter, they face annihilation. Such efforts yield little reward. Yet, the proposal put forth by the Eastern King to establish a celestial court is markedly different. Firstly, he is bestowed with a mandate from the most fortunate Tao ancestor of the current wilderness. His purpose is to govern the celestial path, preventing celestial beings from causing harm to sentient beings. Thus, to advocate for the establishment of the celestial court under this pretext is to align perfectly with the heavenly order, a natural progression. With such legitimacy, a multitude of celestial beings will undoubtedly rally to his cause, leading to a gradual ascent in fortune. Ultimately, it is likely that the Eastern King and the Western Queen will ascend to become the third most fortunate entities in the vast wilderness. At this moment, the hall fell silent, as the mighty present began to grasp this reasoning. They gazed in astonishment at the Eastern King, inwardly chastising themselves for their previous misjudgments. Initially, they had perceived him as a sycophant, unaware of the depth of his cunning. Could it be that he has been orchestrating this since the conclusion of the second sermon? No. Suddenly, the disciples of the three purities, 6 members of the mysterious sect, had their eyes gleam with insight. Shifting their focus to the young man in white seated at the head, leisurely sipping wine. In their eyes, the Eastern Prince is but a minor figure, utterly devoid of such cunning. This leaves only one possibility. Behind this scheme lies their esteemed elder brother. Indeed, this notion just emerged. The three pure ones felt a jolt in their hearts, their expressions shifting, their minds racing. Reflecting carefully, they recalled how the Eastern Prince ascended to the pinnacle of male immortals. Was it not due to their elder brother's sudden shift in demeanor, showering the Eastern Prince with unparalleled warmth before the discourse commenced? This fervor led the myriad powerful beings to acquiesce to the decree that elevated both the Eastern Prince and the Western Mother during the vote commanded by the Tao ancestor. Moreover, Crucially, the original intent of the 3,000 Great Powers was to have the Elder Brother stand alone as the supreme figure of male and female immortals. Yet, what did he do? He declined. To the three Pure Ones and Nuwa, this refusal was nothing short of a masterstroke. By retreating into the shadows and awaiting the establishment of the Celestial Court, with countless powerful beings joining, a thriving fortune flowed seemingly towards the Eastern Prince and the Western Mother, but in reality, it was all channeled into the hands of their elder brother. Hiss! Upon this realization, the three Pure Ones and their companions inhaled sharply, feeling a chill run down their spines. The seemingly gentle elder brother possessed a mind so intricate. He appeared to perceive everything. Each move was calculated with unfaltering precision, as if he had foreseen the trajectory of dozens of future steps. Though they regarded him as their junior, at this moment, they were racking their brains merely to glean a fragment of the situation. Yet they could never keep pace with his rhythm. In that instant, they bore expressions of bitterness, surveying the multitude of powerful beings in the Grand Hall. Noticing that these individuals remained fixated on the Eastern Prince, the six felt somewhat reassured. At the very least, they had uncovered some truth, far surpassing these others. Thus, a dilemma arose. The Eastern Prince's current proposition, seemingly soliciting their elder brother's opinion, was in reality a direct challenge towards the six of them. As disciples of the mystical door, they were bound to respond. Should they acquiesce to the Eastern Prince's proposal? To be candid, they were reluctant to agree. For once the Celestial Court was established, it could become an unstoppable force, rendering future attempts to restrain it nearly impossible. Even if they achieved sainthood, the Eastern Prince's status might very well rise to be on par with theirs. And with the fortunes seized by the Celestial Court, what then would they do? Truthfully, they were disinclined to consent. Yet, having contemplated so much, would refusing not incur the ire of their elder brother? Wait. Suddenly, the six disciples of the mystical door shared an unprecedented, silent understanding as they locked eyes, each perceiving the astonishment reflected in the other's gaze. Could it be that their ability to see through this slight shift in the situation today was deliberately allowed by their elder brother? The intention, perhaps, was to compel their agreement? Upon grasping this notion, the six members of the Xuanmen turned their gazes towards the white-clad youth seated in the main position, just in time to catch the subtle upward curve of his lips. In that instant, a tremor of astonishment and trepidation coursed through their hearts, unbeknownst to them. At that moment, Tong Yi smiled upon hearing the proposal from the Eastern Prince, perceiving the prolonged build-up as excessive. Ambition, he thought, should be displayed openly. Such hesitance seemed rather distasteful. It was no wonder that this celestial court would not endure for long. Just as he smiled, he noticed his six junior disciples exchanging glances, seemingly engaged in silent communication. After their shared gaze, they all turned to him, their eyes filled with a myriad of inscrutable emotions, leaving Tong Yi somewhat bewildered. What were these six juniors fantasizing about? Before he could ponder further, he saw Laozi suddenly rise from his seat. Chapter 124. The Fury of Emperor Jun and Tai, who supports and who opposes. Tong Yi found himself perplexed at Laozi's abrupt standing. Wasn't the Eastern Prince addressing him? He had yet to voice his thoughts, so why did Laozi rise? Confusion clouded his mind as his gaze fell upon Laozi. To his astonishment, it was not just Laozi. In the next moment, Yuanshi, Tongtian, Nuwa, Jiejin, and Juani all stood up as well. This unexpected scene startled the many formidable figures present, filling their hearts with questions. The Eastern Prince had clearly been seeking the opinions of the sages. Yet why did the other disciples of the Xuanmen rise? Did this indicate their dissent? Were they prepared to oppose directly? It was highly plausible. After all, should the Celestial Court be established, the position of the Eastern Prince would undoubtedly rise significantly. And he would soon no longer need to regard the countenance of these sage disciples. In an instant, the atmosphere within the Grand Hall turned peculiar. The powerful figures present divided into two factions. One group, comprising those of lesser strength and understanding, naturally hoped the Eastern Prince would establish the Celestial Court and that they could swiftly join as founding members, possibly seizing the opportunity for great advancement. Hence, they cast discontented glances towards the Sanqing, believing that should the Sanqing oppose, they too would stand against them. The other faction consisted of those with superior comprehension, potent bloodlines, and inherently strong fortunes. Even with the establishment of the Celestial Court, they would not lower themselves to join under the Eastern Prince's banner. The fortunes were finite. With the Celestial Court's formation, their share could only diminish. For instance, Emperor Jun and Tai displayed expressions of disdain, naturally unwilling to submit to the Eastern Prince. Not only had they previously contended for treasures, leading to disputes, but the two brothers also considered themselves exceptional and had long harbored intentions of establishing their own dominion. In days of yore, alongside the majestic Kunpeng, there was a journey to the celestial realm, captivated by the allure of the 33 heavens. They had meticulously devised a plan to breach the spatial barrier between the starry void and the first heaven, thus envisioning a grand total of 34 heavens. This would serve as a stronghold to launch their ambitious enterprise as brothers. Little did they anticipate that today, the Eastern King would be the first to broach this matter. And moreover, to covet their territory. Di Jun and Tai Yi, rather than appending the table in rage, managed to maintain composure. But how could they possibly acquiesce? Should this endeavor succeed, it would imply that the celestial court would forever loom over them. Hence, their gazes towards the three pure ones were imbued with hope, fervently wishing for immediate opposition from them. They were even prepared to rise in unison, echoing any dissent from the three pure ones. No matter the cost, they intended to stifle the celestial court in its infancy. Gentlemen, do you have any objections? The Eastern King observed the sudden rise of the six from the three pure ones, his countenance darkening as he inwardly lamented the turn of events. After he had spoken, appearing jovial with his cup raised, he was secretly scrutinizing the reactions of everyone present. The expressions around him were clear, delineating friends from foes. Yet, the six from the Xianmen remained an enigma to him. He never anticipated their sudden uprising at such a moment, which filled him with foreboding. Could it be that the six from the three pure ones were poised to be the first to oppose him? However, in the next heartbeat, to the Eastern King's astonishment, the six from the three pure ones revealed smiles in response to his inquiry. Before he could fully comprehend the situation, their voices resonated throughout the Grand Hall. I believe it is entirely reasonable for the Eastern King and the Western Queen, being conferred by our esteemed master, to establish a celestial court for the sake of the Tao, proclaimed Tai Ching, his tone warm, as if he held great confidence in the Eastern King. Upon utterance of these words, silence enveloped the room. Both factions present had been prepared to rise in opposition or support. Yet the words of Laozi had rendered them momentarily stunned. Before they could fully grasp Laozi's intent, the other five joined in with their affirmations. The elder brother speaks most truly. I too concur. Yuan Shi chimed in, casting a subtle glance toward the elder brother. Tong Tian addressed the Eastern King with a benevolent demeanor. Your choice of location is indeed commendable. While the celestial realm remains largely undeveloped, with many regions fraught with peril, its vast expanse and the abundance of resources in the 33 heavens suggest that untold treasures may await discovery. Following suit, Nuwa, Jijin, and Juanti all expressed their agreement with cheerful nods, echoing sentiments akin to those of the three pure ones. Ultimately, the message was clear. Should the Eastern King endeavor to establish a celestial court, the six from the Xianmen would be his foremost supporters. As soon as the celestial guide finished speaking, he cast a sweeping glance over the assembly in the Grand Hall, his gaze imbued with an unmistakable aura of intimidation. It was as though he were declaring that any dissent would be tantamount to opposing the two illustrious sages of the West. After surveying the crowd, the celestial guide's attention notably fixed upon Tong Yi, his expression radiating a sense of pride and triumph before he finally took his seat. This spectacle left the numerous eminent figures present utterly astonished. Not only them, the parties directly involved, the Eastern King and the Western Queen, stood in a state of bewildered disbelief. They exchanged glances, momentarily caught off guard by the delightful surprise, even questioning whether their ears had deceived them. However, upon witnessing the celestial guide openly seeking recognition from the primordial sage, the Eastern King and Western Queen quickly regained their composure, their hearts alight with excitement and joy. Indeed, it was an affirmation. All six disciples of the sage had given their consent. There was no opposition. This unanimous agreement could only have arisen from the clandestine endorsement of the primordial sage. Otherwise, they would not have been so forthright. With this realization, the Eastern King and Western Queen raised their goblets in salute to Tong Yi, draining their cups in a single gulp. No words were uttered, yet their profound gratitude was vividly expressed through their actions. Having completed this gesture, they did not even glance at Tong Yi's reaction. Instead, they refilled their cups and turned to bow graciously to the three pure ones and the six disciples, declaring, "We are most humbled and grateful for the support of our six esteemed friends. Henceforth, we shall diligently manage the celestial court, promote the way of the immortals, and benefit all beings, striving to live up to the trust placed in us by our Taoist ancestor, and not to disappoint any of you." The three pure ones and the six disciples reciprocated the gesture with their own toasts, exchanging cups in a harmonious display. This finally allowed the previously baffled assembly of eminent figures to grasp the unfolding events. At that moment, the Eastern King set down his cup, surveying the crowd with a commanding presence, and proclaimed, "The six Taoist friends of the Xianmen have expressed their agreement. Who among you supports this? Who opposes it?" As he uttered these words, the Eastern King stood tall, his gaze sweeping over the assembly, feeling a surge of overwhelming authority, akin to a sovereign surveying his realm. This inspired the Western Queen, her eyes shimmering with admiration. From his position of honor, Tong Yi observed the Eastern King's bravado with a knowing smile, remaining silent. He noted the expressions of those present, understanding well the intricate web of misunderstandings that had ensnared both the 6 disciples and the Eastern King and Queen. Each party believed they had subtly influenced the other. One side thought it had prompted the Eastern King to make his proposal, while the other believed it had encouraged the agreement of the 3 pure ones and their disciples. Yet, what had Tong Yi truly done? He had merely sipped from a cup of wine. As for his smile, was it a crime to express joy? Nevertheless, Tong Yi had no intention of intervening. Why should one seek to impede? The path of cultivation is often tedious. Observing these individuals engage in mutual speculation and covert rivalry is undeniably more intriguing, is it not? As for their misunderstandings about themselves, it matters little to Tong Yi. He is an anomaly. Do they truly believe that rallying under his banner is beneficial? To claim that figures such as the 3 purities or the Eastern Sovereign hold him in esteem is sheer nonsense. It is merely a matter of self-interest. Should they discover that they have yet to ascend to sanctity, their attitudes would undoubtedly shift. Thus, Tong Yi is disinclined to intervene, allowing events to unfold as they will. The seeds sown today shall yield their fruits in the future, whether they be virtuous or malevolent. They must ultimately bear the consequences. It is far more enjoyable for him to observe the spectacle. At that moment, a voice resounded abruptly. The lamp-lighting Taoist rose, his countenance grave and his voice resonant as he addressed the Eastern Sovereign, saying, "I wholeheartedly acknowledge your virtues and prestige. Moreover, you are both sanctioned by the saints. The establishment of the Celestial Court could be deemed the collective wish of the populace. I, a humble practitioner, not only agree but also publicly declare my intention to be the first to join the Celestial Court, contributing to the preservation of the Tao." Upon hearing this, the Eastern Sovereign and the Western Queen were filled with delight. Their joy stemmed not only from the support rather than opposition, but also from the proactive willingness to join the Celestial Court. They were further pleased that, despite the lamp-lighting Taoist's average character and somewhat lesser comprehension compared to themselves, he surpassed most in the hall. With his leadership, the situation was assured. "Thank you, fellow Taoist, for your support. We wholeheartedly welcome your joining." Although the Eastern Sovereign's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, he maintained an outward demeanor of promptness and cheer in his response. Their exchange echoed like divine thunder cast into the heavenly pool, causing the entire grand hall to erupt with fervor. Those who longed for the establishment of the Celestial Court rose one after another to express their support, toasting the Eastern Sovereign and eagerly reserving their positions, fearing that a delayed affirmation might result in a lower status in the future. After all, even the heavenly realm boasts 33 heavens, and hierarchy is omnipresent. Some who had initially opposed were taken aback by the fervent scene. Reflecting on the attitudes of the 6 disciples of the Xianmen, they felt a mix of regret and trepidation, daring not to express any hint of dissent. They could only feign smiles and rise to indicate their agreement. However, the notion of joining the Celestial Court was not uttered. Rather, they silently hoped that the Celestial Court would be established just as the heavenly realm crumbled. The Eastern Sovereign and the Western Queen wore smiles that had become stiff with the unabashed acceptance of their support. Soon, the majority of the powerful beings present expressed their agreement, with only a few, such as Emperor Jun, Tai Yi, Changxi, and Ming He, remaining as formidable dissenters. They neither voiced their agreement nor expressed dissent, merely immersing themselves in their own cups of sorrowful wine. Dissent? What purpose does it serve in these times? With so many in accord, the tide has already turned. Those like Emperor Jun and Tai Yi, who harbor discontent, certainly grasp this truth. They can only silently curse the 3 pure ones and the 6 beings, hypocritical to the extreme. Clearly, the establishment of the Celestial Court brings them no advantage. Yet, they fear the primordial sage and dare not reveal their true feelings. What can such individuals claim to be as disciples of sages? Bah! As for harboring resentments against the primordial sage, even if the sage were before them, they would dread having their thoughts overheard. Even if the sage were far away, they would still not dare to express their grievances, lest the sage sense their discontent. Thus, their ire is directed towards the 3 pure ones and the 6 beings. The attitudes of Emperor Jun and his companions do not escape the notice of Dong Wanggong and Shi Wangmu, who take mental note but choose to ignore them. After all, the stance has been established. With such overwhelming support, this course is set. The grand vessel of the Celestial Court shall embark today, unstoppable. Soon, Dong Wanggong again produced a bone flute, white as jade, and played a lively tune. Fushi, standing beside Nuwa, felt an irresistible urge and joined in with his wooden zither. The halls once more resonated with celestial music. The celestial maidens, who had previously retreated, leaped back into the grand hall with graceful dances, restoring the atmosphere to its initial fervor. Observing this from his seat of honor, Tong Yi was left bewildered. Wasn't it supposed to be a consultation for my opinion? I haven't even spoken yet. How could they finalize things after just one performance? After all this, I seem to have merely come to serve as a good luck charm. Yet, perhaps it is for the best. He felt no inclination to concern himself with trivial matters. Besides, he had not expressed any position. If any blame were to arise in the future, he could entirely absolve himself. After all, this was all their fanciful plotting. Tong Yi found joy in this and entered the moment, taking celestial fruits from the table to share with Yao Qi, sipping the divine wine himself. Strangely, in his past life, he had disliked alcohol due to his allergy, but in this life, he found the celestial wine to be exquisite, rightly deserving the title of heavenly nectar. He resolved to encourage his beloved disciple to learn the craft of brewing some monkey wine to taste. However, Tong Yi's contentment was soon interrupted as a graceful figure rose from her seat and approached him. Senior brother, I am perplexed about a matter and have come to seek your guidance. I hope you can enlighten me. The enchanting beauty before him slightly bowed, speaking in soft tones. The one who referred to herself as junior sister could only be Nuwa. As she spoke, a hint of shyness appeared on her stunning visage. Yet her phoenix eyes clearly reflected her confusion. Humph. As Yao Qi beheld the enchanting figure of Nuwa approaching, her heart fluttered with a mixture of admiration and discontent. However, upon glancing down at her own petite form, a wave of melancholy washed over her. Nuwa's actions did not go unnoticed by the assembly in the grand hall. Though they continued to indulge in revelry, their ears were discreetly attuned, and their gazes subtly fixed upon the unfolding scene, particularly the three purities, who were eager to discern the intentions of their junior sister. Observing the captivating beauty that obstructed the celestial dance, Tong Yi delicately caressed his wine cup, a hint of resignation flickering in his starry eyes. He sensed the inevitable had arrived. Yet he wondered, could she not wait until he finished his drink and enjoyed the music before approaching? Do not presume that your beauty renders you immune to my resolve. At that moment, as Nuwa felt the multitude of gazes upon her back, she paid them no heed. Instead, her attention was captivated by the striking visage of her senior brother, stirring profound exhilaration within her. Nuwa was acutely aware that the primordial purple chi at her brow resonated intensely, an occurrence she had never experienced since acquiring this mystical energy. This resonance first manifested upon her encounter with her senior brother today. Initially, she questioned her own perception, prompting her to discreetly contemplate during the feast. Ever since the conclusion of the third sermon, she had retreated to her cave to delve into the mysteries of the primordial purple chi. Yet, despite her myriad attempts and myriad methods of inquiry, the chi remained unresponsive, akin to a lifeless fish. To her astonishment, merely attending the banquet had elicited such a vigorous response from the chi. How could she not be thrilled? After her clandestine communion with the primordial purple chi, she was astounded to discover that the source of the chi's fluctuations was none other than her senior brother seated at the head of the table. Thus, she felt compelled to approach him in reverence. To her delight, as she drew closer to her senior brother, the pulsation of the primordial purple chi at her brow intensified almost to the point of breaking free. This revelation solidified her conviction that her senior brother possessed knowledge of her path to sanctification. Boldly, she even entertained the thought that he might hold the very artifact that would facilitate her enlightenment. With this in mind, Nuwa's gaze fixed intently upon Tong Yi, her beautiful eyes shimmering with fervor, yearning to strip away all barriers and uncover the means to her transcendence. Ahem, junior sister, if you have any inquiries, feel free to express them. As your senior brother, it is my duty to guide you. Even with his 2 lifetimes of experience, Tong Yi found himself somewhat overwhelmed by the searing intensity of her gaze. He set down his wine cup, reclining lazily to mitigate the lethal intensity of Nuwa's gaze. Upon hearing Tong Yi's words, Nuwa finally emerged from her fervent reverie. Just as she was about to speak, her words caught in her throat, for she suddenly recalled that the matter of the primordial purple energy was a secret known only to the disciples of the Xianmen. How could she allow others to be privy to this? Should the secret of the purple energy be leaked before the opportune moment, not only would she be in jeopardy, but even the 3 pure ones would have to remain vigilant against potential theft. Contemplating this, Nuwa cast an apologetic glance at Tong Yi before turning her attention to the Eastern King and the assembled dignitaries. Esteemed guests, we disciples of the Xianmen have matters to discuss. Perhaps we should conclude today's banquet? Nuwa's melodious voice echoed throughout the great hall. Though her tone was enchanting, the many dignitaries present could not help but furrow their brows to announce the banquet's abrupt end in the midst of festivities, citing the need for a discussion among the Xianmen disciples. If you have matters to deliberate, do so amongst yourselves. What does that concern us? The Eastern King, as the host, also felt a flicker of displeasure in his eyes. Nuwa's actions, while selfish, were akin to undermining his gathering. Yet, recalling Nuwa's earlier support, coupled with the significance of their discussion, he dared not display any dissatisfaction. Thus, almost immediately after Nuwa spoke, The Eastern King and the Western Queen exchanged glances and rose in unison. Esteemed guests, the matters of the Xianmen are of great import. Shall we move to the rear garden? There, one can enjoy the lake view, complemented by fine wine. What a delightful prospect. The Eastern King bowed to the assembly. His words eased the frowns of the dignitaries present. We beg your pardon, sages. We shall take our leave. The dignitaries collectively stood, bowing to Tong Yi at the head table before departing from the great hall, led by the Western Queen to the rear garden. Even Nuwa's elder brother, Fushi, did not hesitate and promptly withdrew. Before long, the once boisterous hall fell silent, leaving only the three pure ones, Jiejing and Zhuanqi, seated at the table. Observing this scene, Nuwa cast a satisfied glance at the Eastern King. If her prior support for him stemmed from a fear of offending her elder brother, she now felt a moderate fondness for his actions. Turning her gaze to the Eastern King, she commanded, "You may also withdraw." Her tone was imbued with an undeniable authority. Upon hearing this, the Eastern King's smile faltered. He had intended to assert that he was the foremost male immortal bestowed by the Tao ancestor, deserving of the right to remain and listen. After all, this was his home. Must he also leave? How disrespectful. Yet, upon locking eyes with Nuwa, he felt a pang of trepidation. Daring not to utter another word, she turned away. In that fleeting moment, the heart of the Eastern King was consumed with indignation. He resolved to expedite the establishment of the celestial court, awaiting the moment to wield the power of the immortal path. How could these disciples of the mysterious sect treat him with such disdain? Senior sister? What is the meaning of this? Observing the empty hall, the figure of Zhuanti, seated at the designated position, could no longer contain his curiosity and inquired. His question echoed the collective bewilderment of the three pure ones and the four who assisted in guiding the way. All eyes turned towards Nuwa, eager to fathom her intentions behind such a grand display. Nuwa remained silent, instead shifting her gaze towards the obedient Yaoqi, who sat beside Tong Yi. At this sight, Yaoqi, who had been indulging in celestial fruits, paused mid-action. Her eyes widened in surprise, and with a crystalline finger pointed towards herself, a look of grievance surfaced in her gaze. Subsequently, she tugged at the hem of the garment of the person beside her. Though Yaoqi was a celestial maiden, her long companionship with her master had granted her an early entrance into the mysterious sect, surpassing all of them. I expect that in the future, when you encounter her, you shall treat her as a junior sister. There is nothing to conceal from her. In that instant, Tong Yi's cool voice resonated. Upon hearing these words, the 6 disciples of the mysterious sect felt a shudder in their hearts. For at that moment, their elder brother's tone was no longer as gentle and soothing as usual. Instead, it sent chills down their spines, making their very souls tremble. The three pure ones and the guiding figures lamented internally, casting sorrowful glances at Nuwa. What possessed you to provoke this girl for no reason? Meanwhile, Nuwa found herself gazing into the indifferent starry eyes of Tong Yi, feeling as though she had been plunged into an icy abyss, her entire being chilled. Gulping, she managed to respond, "Sister, I was in the wrong. Please do not hold it against me." Humph. Noticing this, Yaoqi finally released her grip on the garment and resumed her feast of celestial fruits. Compared to Nuwa, her preference clearly lay with Hutu. "Speak," Tong Yi prompted, observing the lively spirit still indulging in her meal, his tone succinct yet commanding. Hearing this, Nuwa silently lamented. She had not anticipated that Yaoqi, the celestial maiden, held such a significant place in her elder brother's heart. She could only hope not to incur his displeasure as a result. "Elder brother, please take a look." Nuwa dared not delay any further. With a subtle shift of her focus, the primordial purple aura emanating from her brow took form, condensing to the size of a teacup, resting delicately in her fair, slender hand. Thud, thud, thud. The purple aura pulsated rhythmically, akin to a heartbeat, seemingly striving to break free from Nuwa's grasp, relentlessly moving towards Tong Yi. What? Witnessing this spectacle, the three pure ones, along with the guiding figures, found themselves unable to remain seated. In a moment of sheer astonishment, they all rose to their feet. Chapter 127. The Sorrow of the Yaoqi. Nuwa is about to attain sanctity. What? How is this possible? The primordial purple qi has stirred. The three pure ones, Jane and Zhuanti, all sat up in shock, exclaiming in disbelief. They stared wide-eyed, filled with incredulity as they gazed upon the primordial purple qi in Nuwa's hand. Almost simultaneously, the 5 turned their focus inward, attuning themselves to the primordial purple qi at their foreheads. In stark contrast, they were horrified to discover that their own primordial purple qi resembled that of a lifeless fish. This revelation not only astonished the three pure ones, Jane and Zhuanti, but also stirred within them a sense of defeat. What could this mean? They had all received the primordial purple qi at the same time. Yet why did theirs remain utterly dormant while Nuwa's pulsated with such vigor? Could it be that Nuwa was on the verge of attaining sanctity before them? No. It was inconceivable, absolutely impossible. Each of the five roared in their hearts. Having reached this stage, they all considered themselves extraordinary. How could they tolerate anyone surpassing them in the attainment of sanctity? Not to mention the three pure ones, who held an even higher status than Nuwa. Nor could the two sages of the West accept such a notion. After the conclusion of the third sermon, they had immediately retreated to their abodes for seclusion, intent on exploring the profound mysteries of the primordial purple chi. Yet the results were evidently lacking. Initially, they did not perceive this as problematic. After all, it had only been 3,000 years. Even if 10 or 100 epochs passed without any sign, they deemed it normal. They had only recently entered the threshold of quasi-sainthood, and it was expected that they would not yet sense the opportunity for sanctity. Even Ta Qing planned to return to seclusion following this banquet, focusing on cultivating to the pinnacle of quasi-sainthood before seeking his elder brother to inquire about the deeper truths behind the Tao. However, all these thoughts were fleeting. In that very moment, upon witnessing Nuwa's primordial purple chi pulsating, the three pure ones and the two sages of the West found their composure shattered. In an instant, they surrounded Nuwa, their eyes wide with astonishment as they leaned closer to scrutinize the primordial purple chi. They would rather believe it to be an illusion conjured by Nuwa than accept that the primordial purple chi was moving of its own accord. Meanwhile, the Yao Qi, who had been indulging in celestial fruits, could not help but stretch her neck and lean forward, gazing at the palm of Nuwa in astonishment. At that moment, she finally understood why Nuwa was so serious. Even the mightiest beings had retreated, and she herself had almost felt unworthy to be present. It turned out that the Lord had indeed bestowed the primordial purple chi. As an outer disciple, Nuwa possessed it. Surely the three pure ones did as well. Otherwise, they would not be behaving in such a manner now. Contemplating this, a sense of melancholy welled up within Yao Qi. Once, there were matters that even the master would not disclose to himself and Haoyan. It became evident that the disparity between the disciples of the Xianmen and the celestial children was immense. In the past, the senior brother's overly close and amiable nature had caused her to overlook this gap. However, today she awakened to the reality of her differences compared to the Xianmen disciples. Even the registered disciples surpassed her in strength. Realizing this, Yayu could not help but lower her head, no longer gazing at the purple aura, finding the celestial fruit in her hand devoid of sweetness. At this moment, Tong Yi's ears subtly twitched, absorbing the scene before him. And he could not help but let out a sigh within. He sensed the echo of Yao Yu's heartfelt sorrow and felt the weight of her melancholic emotions. Yet, he found himself unable to offer much explanation. Should he reveal to her that the Hongmeng purple chi was not a boon? That acquiring it would lead to entrapment? He feared that uttering such words would invoke the manifestation of the Tao's will once more. Alas, she must inevitably grow. She could not remain in a childlike state forever. Contemplating this, Tong Yi gently raised his hand and ruffled Yao Yu's hair, allowing unspoken understanding to flow between them. Feeling the warmth above her, Yao Yu lifted her gaze to her senior brother, finding that the clouds of despair in her heart had significantly dissipated. Indeed, regardless of how others treated her, her senior brother would always remain her senior brother. As long as he remained unchanged, all would be well. Silly girl. Tong Yi smiled helplessly. Realizing that he had been overly concerned, he ceased to worry about Yao Yu and turned his attention to Nuwa. Casting a casual glance at the Hongmeng purple chi in her hand, he softly inquired, and then? Upon hearing this question, Nuwa, who had initially worn an expression of hope and trepidation, fell into a stupor. The three clear and two releases surrounding her also turned to gaze at the senior brother. Each of them rendered speechless. What did he mean by, and then? This was the Hongmeng purple chi. It was pulsating. How could he remain so composed? The 6 disciples of the Xianmen were on the brink of collapse. After the initial shock, a glimmer of excitement flashed in Nuwa's eyes. Could it be that the senior brother understood the situation? Otherwise, how could he remain so nonchalant? Nuwa eagerly inquired of Tong Yi, her voice trembling with anticipation. Upon hearing her words, the previously flustered 3 clear and 2 releases stiffened in place. Their expressions shifted dramatically as realization dawned upon them. Indeed, Nuwa was correct. The senior brother's calmness could only be explained by his knowledge of the circumstances. They internally lamented their own lack of composure, recognizing how easily they had been thrown into disarray by the Hongmeng purple chi. Instantly, they all turned excitedly to gaze at the senior brother. 6 pairs of eyes fixated intently upon Tong Yi, leaving them utterly unprepared for what was to unfold. Tong Yi nodded slightly, devoid of any pretense, and stated directly, "Indeed, I am aware. The moment for Nuwa to attain sanctification is approaching." Upon hearing this, the once desolate hall fell into an eerie silence. The 6 disciples of the Xianmen widened their eyes in astonishment, their pupils quivering. "Is this true? Master brother, you are not deceiving me, are you?" Nuwa was the first to react, bursting into a shrill scream, her exclamations echoing in the air. Her entire body trembled, and her exquisite visage flushed with excitement, completely overshadowing her former elegance. At that moment, the three pure ones and the two Buddhist sages received this revelation as if struck by lightning. No, this is not the answer we desire. The violet energy surged. Did it truly signify that the opportunity had arrived? Did this imply that Nuwa would become the third sage of the primordial chaos? Contemplating this, the three pure ones and the two Buddhist sages felt a profound sense of resentment. They instinctively retrieved the primordial violet energy from their foreheads, mimicking Nuwa's actions, placing it in their palms. First, they prodded it with their fingers, then infused it with celestial power, and finally drew closer to Nuwa's violet energy. Yet, no matter their efforts, the primordial violet energy in their hands remained unresponsive. Master Brother, what is happening? Why does our violet energy show no reaction? Is it possible that our junior sister will achieve sanctification before us? The five were still filled with dissatisfaction as they turned to Tong Yi for answers. In response, Tong Yi simply remarked, "Perhaps you should return and focus on your cultivation." Crack. The sound of their hearts shattering echoed in their ears. Each of them turned ashen, shrouded in despair. Master Brother, is my opportunity perhaps linked to you? Once Nuwa regained her composure, she pushed aside her fellow disciples and posed the question that weighed heavily on her heart. Upon uttering these words, she, along with the others, gazed at Tong Yi with fervent anticipation. To their surprise, Tong Yi nodded slightly. Chapter 128. The gourd vine is the instrument of enlightenment. Indeed, Tong Yi exhibited an accommodating demeanor, responding to all the inquiries from his younger disciples. Even in the face of Nuwa's direct and unembellished question, he affirmed with a nod. "Ah, this is it." With those words, under the intense scrutiny of Nuwa and the others, Tong Yi flipped his right hand, revealing a familiar object that appeared in his grasp. Boom, boom, boom. As this item emerged, the primordial violet energy in Nuwa's hand, which had merely been pulsating, suddenly began to writhe uncontrollably, accompanied by a resounding roar. The three pure ones and the two Buddhist sages, witnessing this scene, glanced down at their own primordial violet energy, nearly spitting blood. Simultaneously, they cast curious glances at the long object in their master brother's hand, feeling an unsettling sense of familiarity. What is this? In the depths of Nuwa's heart, a surge of astonishment coursed through her as she harmonized her spirit, suppressing the unsettling fluctuations of the primordial purple aura. She then lifted her gaze once more towards the elongated object held by her elder brother, only to discover it was a vine that appeared remarkably familiar. Was it the gourd vine? Could it be that her brother's earlier assertion regarding its utility was, in fact, tied to Nuwa's own fateful opportunity? As Nuwa and her companions pondered this revelation, Yaoqi was the first to exclaim in disbelief, her eyes wide with wonder as she regarded Tong Yi. She recognized the vine at once, her curiosity piqued by its mysterious nature. Previously, when they had obtained this vine, her brother had remained tight-lipped about its purpose, leaving her with lingering questions about its significance. Little did she anticipate that it would serve as the catalyst for Nuwa's ascension to sanctity. Why then? Had her brother foreseen this so early on? Even if the Lord and the heavenly Tao proclaimed him an anomaly, could he truly defy the natural order to such an extent? To predict the very essence of sanctification? Was her brother, perhaps, a progeny of the heavenly Tao? The mention of the gourd vine jolted her memory. Upon hearing Yaoqi's exclamation, the 6 disciples of the Xianmen exchanged glances, their expressions shifting to one of dawning comprehension. As realization washed over them, a wave of astonishment mingled with a sense of regret surged within. It was one thing for Laozi and Tongtian to have grasped the gourd, but for Yuanshi, Jiejing, and Zhuanti, the thought of their shared endeavor to seize the gourd only to overlook the vine's value was utterly disheartening. Who could have imagined that their elder brother not only secured the gourd, but also absconded with the vine? Such audacity was unprecedented. The final sentiment uttered by them was swiftly retracted, for they feared their elder brother might overhear their thoughts. Elder brother, what purpose does this vine serve? How does it relate to my own sanctification? Nuwa, suppressing her myriad emotions, blinked her beautiful eyes and gently inquired of Tong Yi, her tone imbued with an unprecedented softness and tranquility. At her words, the others perked their ears, turning their attention to their elder brother. Yet, the man who had previously spoken with such candor now simply shook his head and stated, "This is the secret of heaven." As the saying goes, the secrets of heaven must not be revealed. At the very least, I can only share them with you alone. Upon hearing the first two statements, Nuwa's gaze dimmed, while the 3 purities and 2 sages' eyes sparkled with intrigue. However, upon hearing the final declaration, Nuwa's eyes shone with renewed vigor, while the smiles of the 3 purities and 2 sages faded, leaving them speechless. "Would you kindly allow me a moment alone with my elder brother for guidance?" Nuwa promptly responded, bowing respectfully to the 3 purities and 2 sages, her posture adopting an unprecedented humility. In her heart, She believed that as long as she could attain sanctification, no sacrifice would be too great. Even offering a salute to the two individuals she despises, Ji-in and Juan-Ti, poses no issue. After all, once she attains sainthood, they will no longer be her brothers in the path before her. They must show reverence to the saint. And this is destined to transpire. It merely awaits the elder brother's announcement. Indeed, the elder brother speaks true. Our opportunity has not yet arrived. Therefore, it would be prudent to return and refine our skills. I shall take this moment to extend my congratulations to my junior sister. Observing Nuwa's demeanor, while others remain lost in contemplation, Tong Tian is the first to respond. He smiles at Nuwa, his countenance imbued with a newfound sense of acceptance. Tong Tian, with a heart as pure as a child's, initially felt a pang of discontent and profound loss upon realizing his inferiority to Nuwa. Yet, he soon comprehended that rather than wallowing in self-pity, it would be far more beneficial to return and cultivate diligently. To harbor grievances only signifies an inadequate mindset and insufficient attainment. Is such a self truly worthy of becoming a saint? Elder brother, I shall take my leave. With clarity in his heart, Tong Tian then bowed to Tong Yi, and without waiting for Laozi or Yuanshi, he swiftly turned and departed. Nuwa gazed gratefully at Tong Tian's retreating figure before turning her attention to the other four brothers. At this juncture, Erqing and Ershi regarded the primordial purple energy in Nuwa's hands, and then glanced at the elder brother, falling into a contemplative silence. Truth be told, they were most reluctant to withdraw, even pondering whether they could prevent the elder brother from revealing the heavenly secrets to Nuwa. But reality? What the elder brother intends to do is beyond their capacity to obstruct. I too extend my congratulations to my junior sister, eagerly anticipating the day of her ascendance to sainthood. Soon, under Laozi's guidance, the four of them performed their bows with some reluctance before finally retreating. The Grand Hall, in the blink of an eye, lost several more individuals, leaving only Tong Yi and Nuwa. Nuwa blinked, daring not to cast her gaze toward the Yaoqi this time. One learns from experience. Whether Yaoqi could remain here was not for her to speculate. Otherwise, should her junior sister weep, her elder brother would don a cold demeanor once more. Seeing Nuwa's perceptiveness, Tong Yi smiled with relief. However, he did not anticipate that this time. It was Yaoqi who spoke first. Elder brother, I shall return to the Zixiao Palace to cultivate, Yaoqi softly informed Tong Yi, tucking the celestial fruit into her sleeves. Aware that it was a heavenly secret, she understood well that her presence was unwarranted. It is best that she too calms her mind and cultivates diligently, striving to reach the pinnacle of quasi-sainthood and subsequently seek the path to true sainthood. She could hardly believe that if Nuwa could attain sainthood, why could she not? As for the primordial purple energy, what is so remarkable about it? The master mentioned that the purple aura originally had 9 strands, but one has vanished without a trace. Perhaps I could find that elusive strand myself. Regardless, I am determined to prove that I am not inferior to Nuwa. You may stay behind. Tong Yi gently brushed Yaoqi's nose, offering comfort. He could hear the tumultuous thoughts of Yaoqi, chaotic yet imbued with a glimmer of positivity, which brought him both a sigh of exasperation and a sense of solace. No, I wish to cultivate, Yaoqi stubbornly replied, scrunching her nose. Knowing her resolute nature, Tong Yi ultimately refrained from insisting, watching as Yaoqi flew out of the grand hall alone. Senior brother, now that there is no one else, can you speak freely? With the absence of others in the hall, Nuwa felt completely at ease and joyfully approached Tong Yi, speaking softly. Junior sister, please maintain your dignity. Chapter 129. Creating Humanity with Nuwa Senior brother. Is this truly feasible? I am afraid. Junior sister, there is no need for fear. It is the same for everyone during their first attempt. In the vast expanse of the eastern continent, Tong Yi and Nuwa were engaged in the creation of humanity. Indeed, Nuwa was utilizing the Qiankuan Ding to forge, while Tong Yi observed, his thoughts wandering elsewhere. After Nuwa inquired about her path to sanctification, Tong Yi took her away from the western Kunlun and brought her to this location, intending to establish this plane as the birthplace of the future human race. Why the eastern continent, you may ask? The answer is straightforward. The western lands are exceedingly barren, dominated by the 2 bald monks, rendering them an unsuitable choice. The southern lands are the ancestral ground of the shaman clan, and with the impending calamity of the shaman and demon, proximity to such a place would not bode well for humanity. The north is too frigid, with frozen earth everywhere. Thus, in Tong Yi's view, the eastern continent is the most suitable place for the emergence of humanity. In his past life, as a member of the human race, even though he now traverses life as a monkey, he still wishes for a better existence for humanity. This plane boasts a temperate climate, fertile soil, and moderate spiritual energy, allowing the human race to thrive in the early stages. Regarding the previous conversation, it was quite simple. Although Nuwa's craftsmanship was remarkable, even exceptional, As evidenced by her recognition of the Qian Kuan Ding amidst the splitting treasure rock, the matter at hand was different. Tong Yi informed her that this time, the forging process would diverge from the norm. The treasures being crafted would be made from earth imbued with innate intelligence from the moment of its creation, and the materials required must possess a congenital quality. Such a demand left Niuhua incredulous. In her understanding, no matter how one forges, the resulting items are always acquired through postnatal means. Furthermore, for postnatal treasures to develop intelligence, they require countless epochs of nurturing. How could there possibly exist a treasure? Once the process of refinement is initiated, is it possible to give birth to a fully formed intelligence? Does this imply that she must forge a primordial treasure? Moreover, it must be composed of earth. Primordial earth? This perplexes her even further. Clearly, her aspiration is to attain sanctity through virtue. What connection does this have with soil? Is she to cultivate land, nurture flowers, or tend to spiritual plants? To be candid, at this moment, Niuhua finds herself utterly bewildered. Yet, her trust in her elder brother remains unwavering. She believes that he would not go to such lengths without purpose, guiding her in this endeavor. Thus, she resolves to refine the earth. Brother, shall I commence the furnace? She inquires, gazing at the cauldron, where the amalgamation of various earth attributes has caused the energy to swell. Tong Yi nods slightly, a mysterious smile gracing his lips as he discreetly establishes a spatial barrier before him. Although he appears to be standing still, a vast expanse of distance now separates him from Niuhua, an astonishing 100,000 miles. Boom. In the next moment, as Niuhua lifts the lid of the Qian Kuan cauldron, the unknown soil that has been compressed and refined for so long erupts violently. A terrifying force blasts the lid into the heavens, and countless grains of earth, infused with this surge, instantaneously engulf Niuhua. In an instant, thick smoke fills the air, and dust blankets the surroundings, the acrid scent of charred earth wafting through the atmosphere. After 3 breaths, a tempest arises, dispersing the smoke and dust. Covered in grime, Niuhua stands in place, staring blankly at the now empty cauldron. As for the soil, it has been obliterated, scattered in every direction. It is evident that she has failed. Cough. Cough, cough. Brother, are you unharmed? Niuhua jolts back to reality, her concern for the materials momentarily forgotten as she turns to her elder brother in haste. Upon seeing him, she is taken aback. Unlike her disheveled appearance, her brother remains impeccably dressed in pristine white robes, untouched by the explosion. This raises doubts within her. Is he playing a trick on her? Is such a method truly incapable of yielding results? Did he foresee the explosion and prepare accordingly? Yet, upon further reflection, Niuhua dismisses this thought. She acknowledges that the rapidity of the explosion had caught her off guard, but as a sage, it is only natural for her brother to remain unscathed. Yes, indeed, it must be her own shortcoming. She must continue the refinement. With this resolve, before Tong Yi can utter a word, she waves her right hand decisively. Recall the lid of the Qian Kuan Ding and immerse it in primordial materials. Once again delving into the process of refinement. Boom. A century later, a resounding roar reverberated through the heavens. This time, Niuhua was well prepared, avoiding the calamity of being covered in soot from the blast. However, the 2 failed attempts ignited her competitive spirit. She did not spare a glance at Tong Yi, meticulously cleaning the furnace once more and adding materials for another round of refinement. Tong Yi, who had been in a meditative state, briefly opened his eyes only to close them again, resuming his cultivation of the Zixiao Heart Sutra. After shattering the primordial purple energy, he had restored his innate essence, allowing him to pursue the path of the primordial spirit. Naturally, he seized this opportunity to cultivate, unwilling to squander time. A century is neither excessively long nor alarmingly brief. In this span, he successfully advanced to the peak of the late stage of Tai Golden Immortal, being but a step away from the great Luo Golden Immortal. As for Niuhua, he felt no inclination to intervene in her endeavors. The act of creation was intertwined with merit. A mere guiding word sufficed. If he were to teach her everything in minute detail, it would be more efficient for him to create beings himself. Time flowed swiftly, and a millennium passed once more. Boom. The familiar sound of an explosion echoed throughout the realm once again. In total, the furnace had erupted nearly 10 times. This time, Niuhua finally paused, gazing sorrowfully at her spatial sleeve. The once abundant primordial earth materials had dwindled significantly. Yet, no matter how she refined the earth, it remained intact within the furnace, only to explode upon emergence. The signs of sanctification remained elusive, and doubt began to creep into Niuhua's mind. Senior brother, you assured me that the gourd vine was my path to enlightenment. Why then, must I refine this material? Am I truly so inept? Upon witnessing yet another furnace detonation, Niuhua sat despondently on the ground, turning to the meditating Tong Yi with a hint of frustration in her voice. Though her words seemed to express self-doubt, they were, in fact, an inquiry directed at him. Is this truly reliable? I have spent over a millennium toiling with this earth. I cannot continue indefinitely. Tong Yi opened his eyes, a glimmer of joy flickering within them. Another 1,000 years had passed, and he had successfully achieved the 5 qi returning to origin, with a single flower coalescing within his dantian, marking his genuine entry into the early stage of the great Luo Golden Immortal. He was quite satisfied with this progress. Observing Nuwa's crestfallen demeanor and the flicker of skepticism in her eyes, Tong Yi understood it was time to offer her encouragement and guidance. Since you have attempted refinement over a dozen times, have you discerned any discrepancies? Chapter 130. Is the senior brother truly toying with me? Discrepancies? Hearing Tong Yi finally speak, Nuwa's curiosity was piqued. Nuwa narrowed her eyes, lost in contemplation. She realized that her greatest fault lay in her stubbornness. Since her senior brother possessed the answer, why had she not inquired sooner? After a moment of internal lamentation, Nuwa closed her eyes and began to meticulously recall each step of the refining process. The selection of materials, the covering of the furnace, and the manipulation of the true fire to melt the soil until completion. The more she reminisced, the more her brows furrowed. It was not that she uncovered a flaw. Rather, she felt her execution was flawless. In fact, during the subsequent refinements, she had become exceedingly adept at controlling the true fire to meld the clay. Inside the furnace, the soil no longer exhibited that initial swelling sensation. Yet, upon completion, the outcome was still a failure. After a quarter of an hour, Nuwa opened her eyes, revealing a mix of confusion and defeat. Senior brother, I still cannot comprehend where the problem lies. I humbly ask for your guidance. After a sigh, she cast her gaze upon Tong Yi, slightly bowing her head as she spoke. At that moment, she began to doubt whether her senior brother was toying with her. Otherwise, why had he not responded to her inquiries regarding the gourd vine? Though Tong Yi could not yet eavesdrop on Nuwa's thoughts, having lived 2 lifetimes, he immediately discerned the suspicion reflected in her expression. That was unacceptable. As the eldest brother, how could he tarnish his reputation? Without resorting to theatrics, he waved his right hand. With a hum, a radiant 5-colored glow emerged, settling before Nuwa. What do you think of this treasure? Tong Yi inquired, gesturing towards the 5-colored cauldron he had crafted. Nuwa was momentarily taken aback. She examined her own Qinquan cauldron and then Tong Yi's 5-colored cauldron. Senior brother, why does the shape and structure of your cauldron resemble my Qinquan cauldron so closely? Nuwa asked, her face filled with bewilderment. Tong Yi, upon hearing her, scratched his nose. Of course it resembles it. I crafted this piece entirely based on a high imitation of your Qinquan cauldron. He had not anticipated that Nuwa's attention would fixate on this aspect. That is not the main point. I want you to observe how this cauldron differs from yours. Tong Yi asserted, tapping the 5-colored cauldron with conviction. This is of great importance. Nuwa silently mused about his insistence, but responded with a simple "oh," widening her eyes as she surveyed the 5-colored cauldron. She even began to touch and explore it. Upon closer inspection, she was genuinely astonished. Though this cauldron is merely of postnatal treasure grade, its stability is on par with my Qinquan cauldron. The 5 colors it possesses are due to the harmonious blend of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Within this cauldron, the true fire possesses power that rivals any primordial flame. Nuwa, while exploring, continuously expressed her astonishment. Eventually, she suddenly realized, turning to Tong Yi, she exclaimed, Senior brother? Did you forge this? To her surprise, her elder brother exhibited such remarkable skill in the art of weapon crafting. It is likely that even the third brother, renowned for his mastery in this domain, would feel inadequate upon witnessing this cauldron. Nuwa's melodious voice flowed like a gentle stream, resonating within Tong Yi's heart. With each utterance, the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. At that moment, as Nuwa turned her head, he hastily covered his mouth and inquired, And then? Have you not yet discerned your issue? Holding the cauldron, Nuwa stood frozen in place, Tong Yi's words echoing in her mind. The light in her eyes gradually brightened. In that instant, she felt as though she had received profound enlightenment. I understand now. The 5 elements. The soil cannot consist solely of earth. It must encompass all 5 elements. Nuwa joyfully exclaimed, bending down to grasp a handful of soil. This soil, formed by the natural order of the universe, presented the very evidence before her. Yet, she had remained perplexed until now. Gazing at the earth in her hands, she felt the presence of plant ash, metallic powder, and moisture. In that moment, it was as if she traversed through time, witnessing the past of this soil. This is the true essence of earth. What she had forged was merely pure soil, which is why it was rejected by the heavenly path. Even with entirely innate materials, it would explode upon emergence. Senior brother, it is the 5 elements. I cannot solely utilize earth attribute innate materials. I must incorporate all 5 elements, correct? Nuwa comprehended everything, clutching the soil and joyously approaching Tong Yi for affirmation. Having learned from her prior lessons, Even though she believed she had achieved enlightenment, she refrained from immediate experimentation, seeking confirmation from her elder brother instead. To her delight, Tong Yi finally smiled in response to her inquiry. Furthermore, since it was essential for him to possess innate intelligence upon his emergence, the materials chosen for crafting must be rich in the essence of life. You will also require this, Tong Yi said, as he turned his right hand, revealing two luminous orbs. One radiated a tricolored brilliance, while the other exuded a deep and rich life force. What is this? The Trilite Divine Water. My heavens, senior brother, are you truly providing me with Trilite Divine Water for my crafting? Nuwa gazed at the two luminous orbs in Tong Yi's hand, her attention captivated by the Trilite Divine Water. The Eastern King had bestowed upon her elder brother 1,000 drops of this precious water. Yet, had he not given it all to Yaoqi? This implies this is something Master Brother has accumulated himself. At this moment, he intends to use it for his own crafting? A wave of emotion and guilt surged within Nuwa. She inwardly lamented her previous lack of compassion. How could she question Master Brother simply due to a series of setbacks? He has shown such generosity. The Three-Light Divine Water is the foremost sacred elixir of the primordial era. Even for her, after countless years of accumulation, she possesses only a few drops. Yet, the quantity of Three-Light Divine Water in Master Brother's hands evidently exceeds 1,000 drops. She truly feels unworthy of Master Brother. However, before she could finish her self-reflection, she saw Tong Yi thrust two glowing orbs into her hands. Go on, go on. Do not disturb my cultivation. Chapter 131, The Colorful Soil. Do you wish to achieve sanctity? Yaoqi huffed, utterly lacking in romantic sensibility, observing Tong Yi as he pressed the two orbs into her hands, then dismissively urged her away. Nuwa cast him a reproachful glance and silently berated him. Among the myriad celestial beings of the primordial world, aside from Hutu, she was undoubtedly the most exceptional in terms of comprehension, talent, and beauty. Regardless of the powerful figures who gazed upon her, their eyes sparkled with admiration as they sought to discuss the profound principles of yin and yang. Yet only Master Brother failed to spare her a glance. His demeanor toward her was exceedingly aloof. Instead, he showered Yaoqi with warmth. What is so remarkable about that little girl? As Tong Yi concluded his remarks and closed his eyes once more to meditate, Nuwa, filled with indignation, turned back to the furnace. After spending a quarter of an hour cleansing her mind of grievances, she began her crafting anew. It was at this moment that Nuwa realized the soil contained within the other glowing orb bore a strangely familiar essence. With a flick of her right hand, a gourd appeared, while her left held the 9 heavens restoring soil. Comparing the two, Nuwa's expression turned to one of astonishment. This soil was evidently of the same lineage as the gourd. No, it should be said that this soil had nurtured the 7-colored gourd. Moreover, after fostering the gourd, it still radiated a rich essence of life. One could only imagine the rarity of this soil. It was incomparable to the Three-Light Divine Water. Reflecting on the gourd vines in Tong Yi's possession, she had now entirely embraced Master Brother's intentions. With both the vines and the soil in her grasp, Master Brother surely had his own reasons for instructing her to refine the earth. This time, she must succeed. With that thought, Nuwa ceased her aimless musings and ignited the furnace in a hidden valley of the western lands. While the western terrain may be barren, this valley stands as an oasis amidst the desolation. Towering ancient trees and lush greenery abound, brimming with vitality. At this moment, Yaoqi, the young maiden, stood at the edge of this verdant sanctuary, her countenance etched with anxiety as she gazed into the depths of the valley. Little girl, do you aspire to attain sanctity? Are you familiar with the primordial purple energy? With it, anyone can achieve enlightenment. Trust me, I possess this primordial essence. If you wish to become a sage, I can assist you. Come closer. Upon hearing the soft, sacred voice emanating from the valley, Yaoqi's face reflected her alarm. Initially, she intended to traverse the passage above the western lands to return to the heavenly realm and the purple cloud palace. However, as she passed over this region, curiosity was piqued by the sight of the valley. After all, it was common knowledge that the Dragonhan catastrophe had nearly shattered the western lands, obliterating the spiritual veins beneath the earth. Even after her master attained sanctity and the heavenly Tao bestowed blessings, the western lands could not recover swiftly. As she flew, the desolate sands and dunes stretched below. The sudden appearance of greenery stirred her curiosity. She imagined the possibility of a treasure emerging, perhaps a rare innate spiritual root, which she could claim and present to her senior brother, who would surely appreciate it. Thus, she descended into the valley for a closer inspection. However, upon landing, Yaoqi was taken aback. While she had sensed the presence of creatures moving within the valley from above, upon her arrival, she found it eerily devoid of life. A profound silence enveloped the lush landscape, which, despite its vibrant green, evoked an unsettling chill deep within her. Realizing the dire situation, she attempted to flee. only to be struck with terror as she discovered that no matter which direction she attempted to escape, she invariably returned to the valley's edge. Time felt distorted. She had no notion of how long she had wandered the periphery of this valley, only that years had slipped by. In her desperation, she had even suspected the presence of a formation and sought to decipher it. Yet, regardless of how she recalled her master's teachings or applied her deductions, she could not unravel its mysteries. Today, the valley's depths resonated with that soft feminine voice once more, intensifying her fear and confusion. Even more astonishing was the knowledge that this presence possessed the primordial purple energy and claimed to have it. How could this be? Who are you? I am a Deluo Golden Immortal. Come out, and I shall shatter your head. Yao Sahalu, mustering her courage, called out towards the source of the voice. She feigned a fierce tone, her colorful skirt radiating brilliance. Alas, her voice was far too youthful, rendering her attempts overly adorable and devoid of any semblance of menace. Upon hearing her words, the enchanting voice echoing through the valley momentarily faltered. In that instant, Yao Sahalu felt a pang of regret for having ventured alone back to the Zixiao Palace. She should have remained by her senior brother's side. If he were with her, what demons or monsters would dare approach? They would all be vanquished with a single blow. Senior brother, where are you? Please come to my rescue. Yao Sahalu repeatedly called out within her heart. Suddenly, a resonant hum filled the air, and a burst of five-colored radiance erupted from the Qinkuan cauldron. Have I succeeded? The furnace did not explode. Senior brother, I have succeeded. As she beheld the vibrant clay floating before her, Nua's face was alight with astonishment. She sensed a connection with it, realizing that despite being mere clay, it possessed a consciousness that communicated with her. In that moment, Nua understood that she had truly succeeded. Her body trembled with excitement as she scooped up the colorful clay and rushed to Tong Yi's side. Senior brother, look, is this it? Nua waved the colorful clay before Tong Yi, her joy manifesting in a dance akin to that of a little girl. After spending more than 1,000 years and failing numerous times, she had finally achieved success in front of her senior brother. How could she not be elated? Yet amidst her joy, the confusion in Nua's heart became more pronounced. The colorful clay had been refined, yet she sensed no trace of ascension towards sanctity. What was to come next? Was she to use this clay to cultivate spirit plants? That seemed rather extravagant. At that moment, Tong Yi opened his eyes. He gazed at the exuberant Nua and smiled. It must be said, this opportunity was meant for Nua to seize. A mere spark of understanding could lead to great accomplishment. However, this was only the beginning. Next, you should attempt to mold a living being from this colorful clay. Tong Yi instructed Nua before closing his eyes once more to continue his cultivation. The 3 flowers would gather atop the head, the human flower in the lower dantian during the early stages, the earth flower in the middle dantian during the mid stages, and the celestial flower in the upper dantian in the later stages. At the pinnacle, one would consolidate the 3 flowers of heaven, earth, and humanity within the mud pill palace at the crown. Upon success, one would stand on the threshold of quasi-sainthood. Yet for some inexplicable reason, Tong Yi felt a disquiet in his heart. It seemed as though something significant was about to transpire. Yet, despite employing the 6-eared divine hearing to listen intently, he detected no anomalies. Thus, he could only conclude that it was a result of his cultivation of the great Luo Golden Immortal, manifesting in the convergence of the 3 flowers. Consequently, he devoted himself even more diligently to his practice, cautious not to be complacent. As he observed his senior brother utter a few words before returning to his cultivation, Nua, at that moment, ceased her disdainful glances. Instead, her delicate form trembled slightly, and an expression of incredulity flickered in her enchanting eyes. For, upon hearing those words, she suddenly experienced a profound and mysterious sensation. It was as if a voice, echoing from the void, incessantly urged her, "Hurry, quickly mold." For if she succeeded in this endeavor, sanctification would be imminent. Chapter 132. Nua imitates the phoenix. Molding a chicken watching her senior brother enter a meditative state with his eyes closed had become a customary sight for Nua. She gazed down at the multicolored clay in her hands, her brow furrowing in contemplation. Mold a new being? Was it truly feasible? After a moment of excitement, she quickly regained her composure, murmuring to herself, her words laced with uncertainty. It was essential to recognize that, in the present age of the primordial world, all myriad races had evolved from the fallen body of the Panga deity. Each ancestral figure of these races was an innate being, formed naturally. Her senior brother's insistence on her creating a new being from nothing seemed to suggest that he was asking her to perform an act reserved for the Tao of heaven itself. Could she truly accomplish such a feat? However, one thing was certain. This path was undeniably the route to her own sanctification. If she succeeded, it would undoubtedly be the first miracle in history. She must not dwell on it. If her senior brother believed it was possible, then it surely was. Nua lifted her jade hand and gently tapped her forehead, clearing away the distracting thoughts. She turned her gaze to the already engaged Tong, suddenly finding it peculiar. Was her senior brother not a saint? Moreover, he had achieved his sanctification through his physical form. Why, then, was he still engaged in cultivation? Furthermore, she could not sense even a hint of cultivation energy emanating from him, which struck her as exceedingly odd. What principles was her senior brother cultivating? After a brief moment of confusion, Nua's eyes sparkled with realization. Perhaps after her own sanctification, she would be able to discern the truth. With this thought, she hesitated no longer, disregarding any notions of propriety, and seated herself cross-legged. Gazing down at the multicolored clay in her hands, she fell into deep contemplation. Time flowed ceaselessly, with the sun and moon revolving countless times overhead. The look of perplexity on Nua's face deepened. In the end, she began to tug at her hair in frustration, finding the contemplation of this question to be more challenging than the act of cultivation itself. What precisely was she to mold? It was exceedingly difficult. Truly, it was overwhelmingly challenging. Without a hint of direction, Nua cast the multicolored clay in her hands onto the ground, feeling somewhat despondent and yearning to lie down. Yet, in that very instant, she glanced at the earth beneath her. To her left lay the naturally formed soil of the universe, and to her right, her own crafted multicolored clay. At that moment, it was as if a thunderous revelation erupted in her mind. I understand. I know what to do. Nua felt a flash of inspiration, her eyes gleaming with brilliance, and she leaped up in joyous exclamation. Upon observing the clay on the ground, she suddenly comprehended the principle of drawing parallels. Her multicolored clay could indeed be inspired by the earth of the cosmos. Thus, the new beings she sought to create could be fashioned in a similar manner. Having grasped this insight, she turned to share her joy with her elder brother, only to remember that he had entered a meditative state. Nua's beautiful eyes narrowed. Her lips pursed in slight disappointment as she settled cross-legged once more, determined to regroup. She began to ponder. If she were to create a new life form, from which of the myriad races of the primordial world should she draw inspiration? Nua began to recall the appearances of the ancient races. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Her eyes brightened as she thought of a particular creature, the phoenix. As one of the 3 sacred beasts and a female like herself, why not draw inspiration from the phoenix? This time, Nua did not hesitate. With a firm resolve, she immediately set to work shaping the clay. Sitting upon the ground, she recalled the form of the phoenix. She first devoted 100 years to sculpting the internal skeleton, organs, and meridians of this being. Another 100 years were spent crafting its external features, the head, neck, torso, and wings. It is often said that the first attempt is the most challenging. At last, she succeeded. In the blink of an eye, 300 years had passed. After numerous adjustments, Nua finally molded her first creation. Gazing at the small avian figure in her hands, she proudly declared, "I am truly remarkable. It bears no difference from a phoenix." With that, Nua excitedly tossed the small avian, still resembling multicolored clay, to the ground. In an instant, a wondrous transformation occurred. The once lifeless clay sculpture, upon hitting the earth, morphed into flesh and blood. The eyes of the creature, modeled after the phoenix, sparkled with vitality. It had truly come to life. She had succeeded. Her elder brother had not deceived her. As Nua looked at the new life form on the ground, she was about to rise and awaken her brother, but the next moment, she was left utterly astonished. Cackling sounds echoed from the small avian, which, though endowed with intelligence, could only emit a series of clucks, unable to speak. With wings yet unable to soar, it merely circled itself on the ground, incessantly singing, dancing, and chirping, as if celebrating the joy of its own birth. Had it failed? The once elated expression on Nua's face instantly fell. She sat down again, observing the little creature, and soon realized another issue. The elder brother had instructed her to create a being of innate nature. Yet this little creature was evidently a product of acquired nature, riddled with flaws, unable to fly despite its wings. Most importantly, the anticipated resonance of sanctity had not manifested, nor had the heavenly merits descended. Thus, Nua comprehended her failure. No matter. I shall try again. Taking a deep breath, she was not disheartened. The fact that she had indeed created a living being from 5-colored clay indicated that the method was viable. After all, this was the creation of a new life. The universe and all its wonders are naturally formed, yet she had conjured the first new being. This was undoubtedly a miracle unparalleled in history. Even her master and fellow disciples would surely be astonished upon witnessing it. With this thought, Nua hesitated no longer. She began to reflect on the reasons for her recent failure. It quickly dawned on her that her expectations were too lofty. A phoenix is a divine beast, not easily replicated. Thus, she resolved to craft a more ordinary being of innate nature this time. Soon, the image of a terrestrial creature appeared in her mind, and with a gentle bite of her red lip, she lowered her head to mold once more. Woof, woof. 300 years later, Gazing at the little creature that could only roll on the ground, wag its tail, and bark, Nuwa sighed in exasperation. Another complete failure. This little creature was still a product of acquired nature. Upon its arrival, it immediately relieved itself, and to make matters worse, it ate its own excrement. It truly repulsed her. Had it not been for its joyful wagging tail and adorable appearance, and the fact that it had already taken form with flesh and blood, she might have crushed it to recreate it. Yet, Nuwa did not succumb to despair. She recalled another type of creature, thinking it might succeed. With determination, she buried herself in the clay once more. Chapter 133. The Creation of Livestock. Where lies the problem? At long last, she condensed her energies. Stepping into the late stages of the Great Luo, a millennium slipped by in the blink of an eye. Tong Yi opened his eyes, the purple light flickering in their depths, his heart brimming with joy. After 1,000 years, he had successfully broken through to a minor realm, a pace he found quite satisfactory. He then turned his gaze towards Nuwa, eager to see whether she had succeeded in creating the human race during this millennium. The sudden sight left Tong Yi utterly astonished. He had been deeply engrossed in his cultivation, his mind unwaveringly focused. To his surprise, he noticed 5 familiar figures beside Nuwa. Ku, Ku, a small bird, which had been perched next to Nuwa, was the first to call out to Tong Yi, sensing his gaze. This outburst was akin to stirring a hornet's nest. Woof, humph, ba, moo. Aside from the little bird, the other 4 beasts also began to vocalize towards Tong Yi. What on earth is happening? Chickens, dogs, cows, sheep, pigs. How is it that in the midst of my cultivation, these creatures have manifested? Tong Yi was taken aback. Was he not supposed to request Nuwa to create humans? How had 5 livestock appeared instead? A sudden realization struck him. In the myths of his previous life, it seemed that indeed, the 6 livestock were creations of Nuwa. He had not even considered this direction before. Unexpectedly, instead of humans, she had conjured 5 animals. What then remained? Horses? In that moment of bewilderment, Tong Yi's exclamation startled the 5 animals, causing them to sit up in surprise and turn their gazes towards him. Since their emergence, they had been heavily reliant on their creator, Nuwa. Though Tong Yi was only the second person they encountered, they felt a strange familiarity with him. However, as Tong Yi was engrossed in his cultivation and enveloped by the forces of spatial laws, the 5 creatures found themselves unable to approach him. At that moment, as Tong Yi awakened from his meditation and the spatial laws dissipated, he inadvertently called out, leading the 5 beasts to believe he was summoning them. Before Tong Yi could react, the chicken, dog, cow, sheep, and pig joyfully rushed towards him. Upon their approach, they began to nuzzle against him excitedly. Notably, the chicken hopped onto his shoulder, incessantly rubbing its wings against him. Please, not like this. I might just become a dish of white-cut chicken. Tong Yi exclaimed helplessly as he observed the 5 creatures clamoring around him. Though they were crafted from vibrant clay, they were all earthly spirits, and he feared that a mere touch might cause them to shatter. Therefore, he cautiously lifted the chicken and placed it back on the ground, his mind racing with culinary ideas. He couldn't help but marvel at Nuwa's incredible talent. How had she managed to so effortlessly mold these 5 animals? All identical to the breeds from his past life, and all native to Huaxiao? Master brother, you've awakened. You must come and see what has transpired. Nuwa, who was seated nearby, playing with clay, heard his voice. Ceasing her unfinished creation of a new being, she turned to Tong Yi for assistance. At that moment, her face was a portrait of grievance and sorrow, nearly on the verge of tears. Throughout the millennia, she had become adept at crafting these new entities. Yet, the dilemma lay in the fact that each being she fashioned fell short of expectations. Every single one was merely a product of postnatal existence, and almost all bore their own flaws. The resonance of sanctification was entirely absent. Consequently, after creating the next 4 beings, Nuwa dared not awaken her elder brother, fearing his ridicule. To her astonishment, before she could complete this 6th creation, her elder brother had concluded his cultivation. At this point, Nuwa had resigned herself to her fate. Let the laughter come. Elder brother, please save me. Nuwa stood up and called out to Tong Yi. Approaching her, Tong Yi glanced at the unfinished clay sculpture in her hands. Indeed, it was a horse among the 6 domesticated animals. Junior sister, what sort of being are you attempting to mold? Tong Yi inquired with curiosity, eager to see if the renowned sculptor's thoughts aligned with her creations. Elder brother, please do not mock me when I reveal this. Nuwa cautiously stole a glance at Tong Yi, reassured by the absence of derision on his face. She then raised her hand, showcasing the small clay figure, and explained, this is a creature called Shu. Shu. Tong Yi paused, recalling this being from his mind. It was one of the weakest among the myriad races of the primordial chaos, originating from the northern continent. Resembling a horse but distinguished by a single horn atop its head. In contemporary terms, it could be likened to a unicorn. In that light, it does not seem too far-fetched, he nodded in agreement, encouraged by Nuwa's hopeful gaze. However, before she could bask in her moment of joy, he pointed towards a leaping little bird at their feet. But I am curious, which being did my junior sister intend to create with this one? Upon hearing this, Nuwa was momentarily taken aback, a crimson hue swiftly spreading across her exquisite visage, her ears flushing with embarrassment. She barely managed to utter 2 words, Phoenix. What on earth? Tong Yi exclaimed, his eyes widening in disbelief. He felt certain he must have misheard. Yet, given his exceptional auditory perception, capable of catching even the faintest sounds from the Zixiao Palace, how could he have misinterpreted something so close at hand? Phoenix, Nuwa repeated softly, her gaze lowered, her voice as faint as a whisper. The flush on her cheeks was so intense it seemed it could bleed. Puff. Ha ha. Unable to contain himself upon receiving the answer, Tong Yi burst into laughter, but as he was still chuckling, he noticed Nuwa lift her head, her eyes already brimming with a burgeoning intent of retribution. He could only immediately clamp his mouth shut, laughter abruptly ceasing. Ahem. Rest assured, junior sister, how could I mock you when I have attained the sanctity of the flesh? Tong Yi raised his hand to wipe his face, his expression instantly becoming exceedingly serious. First, finish molding this horse. Once you are done, I shall inform you where the issue lies. Although Nuwa was filled with deep embarrassment and indignation, as she was acutely aware that the senior brother had just been mocking her, his laughter ringing out boisterously, upon hearing the latter part of Tong Yi's statement. She suddenly regained her composure, her eyes alight with determination. As long as I can succeed, what does it matter if I am mocked by senior brother? After all, it is just the 2 of us here. With this thought, Nuwa bowed her head once more, diligently resuming her task of finishing the horse. Chapter 134. The Birth of Humanity. Divine clouds of merit appear. All right, senior brother. Look, having molded for the 6th time, Nuwa felt her skills had reached a pinnacle. As soon as she completed the sculpture, she hurled it directly to the ground. In that moment, Tong Yi finally witnessed the transformation of clay into a living being. He observed as the small clump of mud, released by Nuwa, began to grow. The instant it touched the ground, the clay exterior shed away completely, morphing into flesh and fur. In the next moment, a horse, standing tall, appeared before them. Like the previous 5 creatures, it reared up its front legs and let out a joyous neigh upon its arrival. This call stirred a commotion, as the other 5 creatures joyfully rushed to the horse, welcoming its presence. Particularly, the chicken agilely leaped onto the horse's back, flapping its wings and clucking excitedly, while the dog circled around to sniff its rear. Witnessing this scene, Tong Yi felt a profound admiration for the wondrous laws of the primordial world, yet he also found the beauty of the moment almost too exquisite to bear. Alas, yet another postnatal being. I have failed again, senior brother. Unlike Tong Yi, who remained contemplative, Nuwa's expression of eager anticipation faded, replaced by disappointment. This is the 6th attempt. I believe my skill in emulating primordial beings had reached a high level. Why, then, do I continue to fail? All I desire is to attain sanctity. I am not trying to usurp the Tao of heaven, nor am I attempting to create the world. Why must this be so difficult? Seeing Nuwa in such a state, Tong Yi realized that the time had nearly come. His initial intent to have her mold the figures independently was not merely due to laziness. He sought to assess her practical skills. Had her abilities been lacking, she would have had ample time over the millennia to improve. To his relief, the contrast between the horse and the previous creatures reassured him. Compared to the initial attempt of molding the phoenix into a chicken, this progress was indeed commendable. At present, Nuwa's skill in molding clay has reached an impressive level. Henceforth, when it comes to creating humanity, one would hope that the results would not be chaotic. Master brother, why do I consistently fail? Could you enlighten me? At that moment, Nuwa, having gathered her scattered emotions, turned to Tong Yi with a plea. She raised her delicate hand to grasp the corner of Tong Yi's garment, biting her lower lip, her beautiful eyes blinking with an endearing innocence that could soften the heart of anyone who beheld her. Even Tong Yi, who had lived 2 lifetimes, found himself momentarily taken aback. Not even the 16-year-old Lu Tianxian from his previous life could compare to Nuwa in this moment. Fortunately, Tong Yi's resolve was unyielding. He chanted silently within himself, "My heart is as steadfast as iron, unbreakable. A woman may only influence the swiftness of my sword's draw." Through this repetitive self-affirmation, he quickly regained his composure. "Junior sister, please conduct yourself with dignity." Gently pushing Nuwa's hand away, Tong Yi clasped his hands behind his back and continued. "Your technique in creation has certainly improved. Yet, why do you persist in shaping the forms of other primordial beings? They exist solely in your memories. Do you truly understand them?" In that fleeting moment of being rebuffed, a flicker of disappointment and sadness crossed Nuwa's eyes. However, upon hearing Tong Yi's subsequent words, she froze in place, her jade hand suspended in midair. It seemed that any further movement could shatter the thoughts that had just begun to form in her mind. "Master brother, are you suggesting? Surprise illuminated Nuwa's eyes as she gazed at Tong Yi, eagerly awaiting his response. Tong Yi slightly nodded, pointing first to himself and then to Nuwa, signifying that he was indeed referring to the human form. He felt a twinge of apprehension regarding her thought process. Should she misinterpret his words and create a being with a serpent's tail and a human body, it would lead to a monumental misunderstanding. Are you suggesting the human form? To create new beings in the likeness of humanity, she exclaimed, her face alight with astonishment and realization. In that moment, Nuwa wished she could give herself a slap for not having considered this sooner. Had it not been for her master brother's insight, she would have continued to think of other primordial beings. After completing the creations of avian and terrestrial creatures, she had been contemplating the crafting of aquatic beings. Yet she had entirely overlooked the concept of the human form. It is crucial to recognize that among the myriad of primordial races, none were born in the human shape. Why is that? Because the visage of the great Pangu is that of a human. Thus, under the celestial rules of the primordial world, the human form is the most suitable for cultivation. Even her esteemed master, Hongjun Daozu, had to take on a human form. Yet, for the myriad races to transform into human forms, they must undergo tribulations and gain the acknowledgement of the heavenly principles to take shape. What if the new beings she creates do not require such tribulations to assume human form upon their emergence? With this thought, Nuwa's heart trembled with excitement. In this moment, she was resolute, convinced that this was indeed the most correct path. Wait a moment, senior brother. Nuwa called out to Tong Yi, her heart steadfast. She immediately settled into a meditative posture, beginning to mold the clay in her likeness with meticulous precision. As she commenced her work, Nuwa discovered an unparalleled fluidity in her movements. She was now in human form and possessed an all-encompassing understanding of every inch of flesh and bone. She could shape the figure even with her eyes closed, unlike any previous creations that had been fragmented and patchwork in nature. This time, however, Tong Yi dared not indulge in any idleness. He stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed upon Nuwa as if he were a factory owner supervising a diligent workforce from a past life. Before long, Tong Yi was astonished, not solely due to Nuwa's efforts, but also because, as she molded the vibrant clay into human form, layers of white clouds began to gather in the sky above them. It was as if the mist from a vast expanse of 1,000,000 miles had converged right above their heads. While the clouds remained white, Tong Yi could distinctly sense a familiar essence within them. He inhaled deeply, feeling a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The merits were on their way. Yet, he pondered how much merit the heavenly Tao would bestow upon him as the guide. As if sensing something, the 6 creatures, previously molded, were now lying on the ground around the clay figure that Nuwa held. Each appeared calm and respectful, their faces solemn, as they awaited the birth of this new being. This time, Nuwa's speed in shaping the clay was astonishingly swift. Within a mere 10 years, she had crafted a female figure that mirrored her own with exquisite detail. However, exercising caution, she refrained from casting it to the ground immediately, opting instead to refine it further. She altered the figure's face, which bore an uncanny resemblance to her own, making it somewhat more ordinary. Nevertheless, even a resemblance of merely 30% was still enough to leave one in awe. After meticulously completing all modifications inside and out, she presented the clay figure to Tong Yi for his review. Quite impressive. Junior sister, your progress is remarkable, Tong Yi remarked, focusing not only on the external appearance, but also on the internal organs and meridians, ensuring that the newly born human would possess an innate Tao body. Upon receiving her senior brother's affirmation and praise, Nuwa, who had toiled for millennia to achieve this creation, took a deep breath. With a face full of tension, she cast the clay figure to the ground. Whoosh! The palm-sized figure expanded midair, and by the time it landed, it matched the height of Nuwa and Tong Yi. The clay transformed instantly into flesh and blood, adorned with long, lustrous black hair that gracefully concealed its modesty. Boom! In the fleeting moment of transformation into clay figures, a thunderous roar suddenly erupted above their heads. Tong Yi, filled with astonishment, looked up to behold the once gathered layers of white clouds, now transformed into a resplendent golden hue. Furthermore, auspicious energies manifested as the forms of 3 divine beasts, the dragon, the phoenix, and the qilin, soaring high and encircling the heavens. Thus, the human race was born, celebrating in unison with the cosmos. What is this? Nuwa, belatedly aware, gazed at the golden-tinged horizon, rendered momentarily speechless. Senior brother, this is the auspicious cloud of merit. The auspicious energy has indeed taken the shape of divine beasts. What immense power of merit must this entail? Observing the horizon bathed in the golden glow of merit clouds, Nuwa excitedly tugged at Tong Yi's garment with one hand while pointing at the clouds with the other, exclaiming in sheer delight. It was no wonder she was so beside herself. The repeated failures had already weighed heavily upon her. The greater the disappointment, the more profound the joy upon receiving a reward. This was her first time witnessing the emergence of the auspicious clouds of merit, and such a grand spectacle at that. One could easily surmise that the impending merit would be abundant. Perhaps she could seize this opportunity to attain sanctity. Although Tong Yi was being yanked this way and that by her tugging, he remained in high spirits and chose not to admonish Nuwa. Instead, he pondered how he would utilize the forthcoming power of merit. Should he enhance his comprehension of the path of time? Or perhaps, make the system more generous in its daily offerings? Alternatively, he could focus all the merit towards the path of strength, striving to shatter the world with his own might in the future. Child, I pay my respects to the Holy Mother. I pay my respects to the Holy Father. At that moment, a youthful voice shattered the exhilaration enveloping Tong Yi and Nuwa. Both turned in surprise, gazing down to find a young girl with long, straight black hair and skin as fair as snow, kneeling before them. Her lustrous black eyes were filled with gratitude and reverence as she looked up at them. You can speak. A primordial body. Senior brother, I have succeeded. I have truly succeeded. Just moments ago, the auspicious clouds of merit had attracted her. Only then did Nuwa truly regard her creation. She sensed the girl's body, her aptitude, and her soul, exploring every facet from head to toe. To her astonishment, she discovered that the girl exuded an aura of naturalness, entirely indistinguishable from that of an innate being. She had surpassed the previous 6 creations. No, it could even be said that there existed a chasm between them. Nuwa could not help but be overwhelmed with joy once more. In contrast, Tong Yi had regained his composure, his expression returning to indifference. With the auspicious clouds of merit having manifested, it was evident that she had indeed succeeded. Junior sister, remain calm. He furrowed his brow slightly as he addressed Nuwa. Upon hearing his words, Nuwa suddenly came to her senses, hastily arranging her garments and hair, her cheeks flushing ever so slightly. Yet, her heart remained aflame with excitement, and she inwardly berated her elder brother. Observing the magnificent clouds of virtue, he remained as steadfast as a rock, unyielding and unperturbed. The composure of her elder brother was truly formidable, yet not everyone could achieve such a state. What was wrong with being excited? This was, after all, a matter of virtue. While Nuwa was still lost in her thoughts, Tong Yi stepped forward and addressed the newly born maiden on the ground. Little girl, I am not your holy father. However, it would be appropriate for you to call her the Holy Mother. Hearing this, Nuwa cast a glance at Tong Yi, her enchanting eyes reflecting a playful reproach. What did he mean? Was it shameful to be recognized as the Holy Father and Mother of humanity? No, you are the first being created by the two of us. It is only fitting to refer to him as the Holy Father, Nuwa earnestly declared to the maiden on the ground. The maiden nodded and shook her head in confusion. Glancing between Tong Yi and Nuwa, her eyes brimming with bewilderment, she found herself at a loss as to whom to heed. Brother, this is indeed something that the two of us have created together. Without you, I could never have accomplished this, Nuwa interjected, noticing Tong Yi was about to speak again. Furthermore, the balance of yin and yang, the conjunction of sun and moon, is a natural law. How could she exist without a father? As she concluded, Nuwa's charming face took on a serious expression. With a decisive wave of her hand, she declared, do not persist in this disagreement with me. From now on, you shall be the holy father of this new being. After uttering these words, Nuwa disregarded Tong Yi and turned her gaze toward the clouds of virtue in the sky. However, in that fleeting moment of turning away, she felt her cheeks heat up with nervousness, her delicate hand pressed against her heart, realizing how audacious she had been to speak to her elder brother in such a manner. Yet, she was unaware of why she had acted so impulsively. Perhaps it was the emergence of some unknown sentiment in her heart, stirred by her elder brother's persistent evasion, that prompted her to behave in this manner. Reflecting on this, she immediately began to channel her powers, striving to regain her composure. Just then, as Nuwa had finally calmed herself, she gazed at the clouds in the sky, her delicate brows knitting slightly. Brother, why do these clouds of virtue appear only as clouds? Where is the virtue? Why has it not descended? Nuwa questioned anxiously, fearing a misstep. To her surprise, Tong Yi seemed to have been anticipating her inquiry. As soon as she began to speak, her elder brother waved his right hand. Buzz. Before her, a familiar object materialized, resonating with a comforting hum that filled her with warmth. It was precisely during her quest for enlightenment that Tong Yi produced the gourd vine. Previously, she had been wholly absorbed in molding clay, forgetting everything else after shaping a maiden, completely oblivious to this object. You yourself have stated that both yin and yang must coexist to align with the principles of heaven and earth. How could the celestial order bestow merit upon you for creating but a single being? While Nuwa remained momentarily dazed, Tong Yi gently suggested, let us utilize this to forge a new race. Nuwa nodded slightly in response, extending her hand toward the gourd vine. Boom. At the instant of contact with the vine, her delicate form trembled. She closed her eyes, succumbing to a profound moment of realization. In the next breath, Nuwa cast the vibrant clay skyward, waving her hand. An astonishing scene unfolded before Tong Yi's eyes. As the vine made contact with the colorful clay, its outer layer shed entirely, revealing the translucent stem within, radiating an enigmatic essence of creation. Observing this, Tong Yi's lips curled in disbelief. It was evident that only in Nuwa's hands could this object unveil its true nature. Previously, when he had tried to use it in a less dignified manner, it had not shed its skin. In her current state of enlightenment, Nuwa remained unaware of the transformation occurring in her grasp. She wielded the creation whip with grace. In an instant, verdant light flickered countless times in the air, and the vibrant clay was divided into 9,999 pieces, each perfectly uniform, suspended in the void. With her eyes tightly shut, Nuwa did not pause. As if guided by an unseen celestial force, she harmonized her spirit and continued to wield the creation whip. With each stroke, all 9,999 chunks of clay simultaneously morphed into humanoid figures. Her movements were swift and fluid, a sight that was utterly enchanting. Before long, all 9,999 little clay figures were complete, comprising 5,000 boys and 4,999 girls. At this moment, Nuwa retracted the creation whip and opened her eyes. Instantly, all the little clay figures descended to the ground. Roar, whoosh. Almost in unison, the three divine beasts, transformed from auspicious energies, raised their heads in joyous howls, their voices brimming with boundless delight, as if to herald a momentous occasion. After their resounding cries, they dove into the depths of the auspicious clouds. Boom. In the next moment, the clouds enveloping a radius of 1,000,000 miles trembled simultaneously. It was then that the three transformed divine beasts emerged from the clouds, bearing a colossal golden basin. This basin was immensely vast. Even a glimpse of its edge revealed a torrent of merit flowing within. Witnessing this spectacle, Tong Yi shuddered as the remaining golden wheel of merit, measuring just a yard in diameter, manifested before him. In astonishment, even Nuwa was taken aback. Chapter 136. The heavens in turmoil, and the monkey intervenes. What has transpired? Why has the entire southern sky turned a resplendent gold? Such a pure and enchanting aura. What could it be? Merit. This is the power of the heavenly Tao, as spoken of by the Tao ancestor. Impossible. Absolutely inconceivable. Southern Zhou is vast. How could the light of merit illuminate the entire region? What magnitude of merit would that require? What? Could it be that someone has accomplished a momentous feat? Is someone on the verge of becoming a saint? At the moment the golden pool of merit appeared, all the mighty beings in the vast expanse of the primordial heavens were jolted into awareness. They hurriedly emerged from their abodes, gazing towards the southern direction of the primordial land. Each one bore an expression of incredulity, exclaiming in astonishment. They immediately produced communication jade talismans and magical artifacts, reaching out to their familiar companions to ascertain what had transpired. Unfortunately, the event was so sudden, and the primordial realm so expansive, that clarity eluded them. Unable to obtain answers, they set out on their own quest for knowledge. Whether by employing divine sight, invoking treasures, or engaging in divination, they were all eager to uncover the truth. Was this truly the merit of the heavenly Tao? Was someone indeed on the cusp of achieving sainthood? In the 33rd heaven of the celestial realm, the Eastern King and the Western Queen were leading a group of powerful beings in a celestial tour. They were constructing palaces and planning celestial duties along with their respective domains. Ever since the banquet concluded thousands of years ago, and having witnessed the disciples of the mystical gate dismissing them with an air of mystery, the Eastern King and Western Queen had lost all desire for leisure. They promptly led their recently gathered followers to the celestial realm to expedite the establishment of the celestial court and refine the system. Just as their endeavors reached a fervent peak, they suddenly sensed a sacred aura emanating from below. In an instant, the Eastern King, the Western Queen, and their retinue gazed downwards, their faces etched with astonishment. Can any loyal minister enlighten me? What has transpired? What is this disturbance? How can it sweep across the heavens, leaving even the celestial realm unable to evade it? The Eastern King furrowed his brow deeply and inquired of the numerous celestial officials behind him. Upon hearing this, the celestial officials exchanged glances, speechless. During this period, they had all congregated in the celestial realm, even bringing their own domains and disciples along, while planning suitable abodes for their future. Who among them had the time to concern themselves with occurrences on the primordial land? Who could they possibly inquire of? They didn't even know where the events had taken place. Your Majesty, we must hasten to investigate. Yet they dared not exhibit even a trace of negligence. After all, As the celestial realm has just been established, if the Eastern King perceives a lack of diligence, one may find themselves deprived of esteemed celestial positions and face dire consequences. Following the ceremonial greetings, numerous celestial officials ascended towards the mortal realm. Atop Kunlun Mountain, amidst the monstrous cliffs, 3 palatial structures stood in majestic alignment. At this moment, sensing the fluctuations of the cosmic energies, the 3 purities, who had been in seclusion, emerged one by one, gazing towards the southern province. "Brother, is that the power of merit? Has Niwa truly succeeded?" Yuan Shi exclaimed, his eyes betraying a mix of envy and jealousy as he looked towards the southern province. He was undeniably envious. The waves of merit power were so immense that it seemed she was on the verge of attaining sanctity. Why was this so? He, a disciple of the inner sect of the Xianmen, found it hard to accept that Niwa, merely an outer disciple, could surpass them in achieving sanctity. Not only Niwa, but even his younger brother, Tong Tian, might ascend to sanctity before him. Yuan Shi could not reconcile this in his heart. Alas, the senior brother has stated that all is governed by fate and law. Such tremendous fluctuations suggest that she is indeed on the brink of becoming a saint. Yet, how did our junior sister attain this power of merit? Can we emulate her? Laozi remarked, his voice seemingly calm. Yet he had been secretly calculating with the Taiji diagram in his hands, having deduced the outcome innumerable times. It was apparent, Niwa was truly on the path to sanctity. While Yuan Shi wallowed in jealousy and resentment, Laozi's focus lay on the possibility of emulating the path to sanctity. In his perspective, should they uncover Niwa's method, they might consider pursuing the path of merit for sanctity as well. However, would their elder brother divulge such knowledge? Certainly not. Otherwise, they would not have been allowed to depart first in Xikanlun that day. Yet what of Niwa? Perhaps they could glean insights from her. Brothers, should our junior sister truly attain sanctity, we must honor her as a saint and henceforth refrain from any disrespect. Tong Tian observed the expressions of his 2 elder brothers, quickly discerning their thoughts. However, he disapproved of their sentiments. Many paths may suit others, but not necessarily oneself. If they were to learn of Niwa's method of attaining sanctity, how could they ascertain whether it would bring fortune or misfortune? Most importantly, Tong Tian had faith in his elder brother. He believed that if such a path were appropriate for them, their elder brother would not have allowed them to depart. Having concluded his thoughts, Tong Tian turned away from the southern province and made his way back to his own Bio palace. In his view, rather than coveting the envy and imitation of his elder brothers, it was far more prudent to forge his own path. He was Tong Tian. One must undoubtedly carve a path that belongs solely to oneself. Humph, such arrogance. Upon hearing Tong Tian's words, Yuan Shi retreated into the Biao palace, the great doors slamming shut, which incited his ire. He turned to Laozi, exclaiming, "Elder brother, look at our third brother. He increasingly disregards us. You must take him in hand. Only by uniting our hearts can we solidify our position in the Xianmen and wield absolute authority in this world. Otherwise, we shall forever remain under the influence of that individual." Laozi raised his hand slightly, signaling for such discussions to cease. Although Yuan Shi refrained from naming names, the elder brother had already achieved sagehood, and they remained unaware of the formidable power a sage possesses. Who could say whether a sage might sense even unspoken grievances? Some matters are best kept within the confines of one's heart. No, one cannot even afford to hold them there. Focus on your cultivation. I have sensed that the path of severing the 3 corpses is more suited to us. If we truly cannot forge ahead, we may seek guidance from our junior sister. At this moment, Laozi's thoughts were wholly consumed by the pursuit of sagehood. He had little regard for his third brother. Witnessing Niwa attain sagehood, he concealed his feelings. But undoubtedly, he felt more troubled than Yuan Shi. So swift? This monkey meddles once again deep within the forbidden grounds of the Zhixiao Palace. After a heavy sigh, a distinct voice addressed Hongjun. "What is this? Your extraordinary disciple is causing chaos again? Heed my counsel. Eliminating him would be the best choice for the Hongwang." Yet, his words trailed off abruptly. "Senior brother, what is this creature? So adorable." Unbeknownst to Niwa, her monumental act of creating humanity had already drawn the attention of the mighty beings across the heavens. Presently, she gazed at Tong Yi with a puzzled expression, asking, "Why are there so many questions, dear girl?" Faced with Niwa's inquisitive gaze, Tong Yi coughed gently, while hastily retracting the golden wheel of merit that loomed behind him. He had never anticipated that the celestial power of merit would be so abundant, enough that even the modest wheel of merit remaining behind him would resonate on its own. He found himself at a loss for how to explain this to Niwa. Should he confess to possessing merit, albeit meager? Perhaps it was best left unsaid. How stingy. Niwa shifted her gaze away, silently storing her creation whip, and then turned her attention to the 10,000 young boys and girls assembled on the ground. This time, she was far more composed than before. She had noticed the golden pool of merit above her head. Its quantity was sufficient not only to elevate one to sagehood, but could easily grant the entire Xianmin the merit to achieve the same. However, with the appearance of the merit pool, there seemed to be no subsequent actions. Nuwa quickly realized that the issue lay with the newly created beings she had just brought forth. Only one step remained. One can achieve fulfillment on their own. We pay homage to the Holy Mother. We pay homage to the Holy Father. Feeling the gaze of Nuwa, under the guidance of the First Maiden, countless young men and women knelt and called out in reverence to Tong Yi and Nuwa. Their voices were imbued with immense curiosity and respect, pondering their origins, their identities, and the nature of this realm. Despite the myriad of confusions within their hearts, they experienced a profound warmth and familiarity emanating from Nuwa and Tong Yi, instilling in them an innate reverence for the two. There's no need for excessive formalities, Nuwa said, observing the beautiful beings she had created, each a paragon of grace. A tender smile graced her lips as she reveled in her success. The Master Brother, the Holy Father, could not escape now. With this thought, she turned joyfully towards Tong Yi and inquired, Master Brother, I have followed your guidance to create countless innate beings. Yet, why has the heavenly Tao not bestowed the power of merit? As she spoke, her enchanting eyes sparkled with anticipation, fixated on Tong Yi. Unbeknownst to her, she had grown accustomed to not overthinking matters. Despite her yearning for the power of merit, why should she struggle when her Master Brother was present? All questions would surely be resolved with a simple inquiry. Most importantly, although her Master Brother had not disclosed it, she could surmise that the small golden disc, merely a foot in size, was undoubtedly linked to the power of merit. This indicated that her Master Brother, who had attained sanctity in physical form, had indeed received the power of merit. While Nuwa was curious about what actions warranted such a meager measure of merit, she decided not to dwell on it. After all, her Master Brother must possess ample experience in acquiring merit. However, upon hearing her question, Tong Yi appeared somewhat perplexed. He raised his hand to stroke his chin, deep in thought. Despite his calm demeanor, he too longed for the power of merit. Regarding Nuwa's query, he found himself equally bewildered. The last time he received the power of merit on Palai Island was merely for vanquishing a corpse monster fashioned from the severed finger of a demon god, prompting a response from the heavenly Tao. But what was different this time? Clearly, the human race had already created beings with innate forms, all right before them. Why then, was the benevolent heavenly Tao delaying the bestowal of merit? At that moment, as he gazed at the throng of young men and women, inspiration struck Tong Yi, and a look of enlightenment illuminated his face. What did you just refer to them as? He asked Nuwa, gesturing towards the multitude of youth. They are new beings. Is there a problem? Nuwa inquired, her brows arching in confusion. Then I have discerned the issue, Tong Yi declared. It is the naming. We must bestow upon them names. Only through naming can we affirm their existence. Tong Yi struck his right fist against his left palm, smiling at Nuwa. This thought struck him suddenly. The severed finger had not been crushed. Instead, it had been stored within the confines of the system's space. However, to the heavenly Tao, it merely vanished. No longer part of the primordial world, hence the bestowal of virtue. This moment mirrored the fate of humanity. They had come into being, yet without names. How could they be addressed? How could their existence be validated? To call them newborn beings? That simply would not suffice. Then, Master Brother, what shall we name these children? Nuwa, untroubled by such complexities, was ready to accept whatever her elder brother proposed. Since there were no issues thus far, it should be straightforward. All that remained was the act of naming, which posed no challenge at all. Before Tong Yi could respond, Nuwa's eyes sparkled with inspiration, and she eagerly exclaimed, Master Brother, all beings refer to those gifted with extraordinary talents as monsters. Why not name these children the Monster Clan? Master Brother, why are you covering my mouth? Nuwa's words trailed off as Tong Yi swiftly placed his hand over her mouth, casting a wary glance at the heavens. What nonsense was this? If humanity were to be labeled as the Monster Clan, surely the heavenly Tao would respond not with blessings, but with thunderous wrath. Indeed, upon witnessing this, Tong Yi nearly burst into laughter in exasperation. The already emerging golden pool of virtue trembled slightly at Nuwa's utterance, as if retreating back into the void. Do not speak, Tong Yi urged, panic rising within him. If the power of virtue slipped away, where would he find solace? And if humanity were to become the Monster Clan, his transgressions would be monumental. Covering Nuwa's mouth, he leaned closer, whispering urgently in her ear, Listen to me. It must be humanity. You must call them humanity. Tong Yi had always been gentle and composed, his demeanor calm as a gentle breeze. Such a look of anxiety was entirely foreign to him. Moreover, the very hand that now muffled Nuwa's mouth had once obliterated the river of oblivion. Nuwa felt a pang of fear and injustice, her eyes inexplicably welling with tears. Yet she dared not resist. Once Tong Yi released his grip, She turned to the throng of youths, her voice trembling as she declared, "Humanity, children, have you heard the words of the Holy Father? From this moment forth, you shall be known as humanity." Though they could not comprehend the actions of the Holy Father and Holy Mother, the firstborn girl among them nodded fervently and cried out, "We shall heed the teachings of the Holy Mother and Holy Father. From now on, we are humanity." With her proclamation, the others, without hesitation, joined in unison, shouting, "Humanity! Humanity! Humanity!" Amidst the fervent cries of thousands, though their voices may be tender, they soar towards the heavens. Boom! In the next moment, the long-anticipated merit pool, having gathered strength for so long, finally relinquishes its hesitance, tilting with resolve. Behold, a torrent of divine merit surges forth from the golden pool. In an instant, it cascades down like a 1,000-foot waterfall, reminiscent of a golden river descending from the heavens. Chapter 138. 3,000 zhang of merit acquired for free. As the magnificent force of merit pours down from the golden pool, it does not merely illuminate the southern continent. The entire primordial universe, across 5 continents and 4 seas, is bathed in golden light. The once radiant glow of the sun and moon, which illuminates the earth, pales in comparison. What is happening? Why has the sky changed color? From whence does this golden light originate? Why does it envelop me in warmth? Merit? Is this the light of merit? Has someone truly attained great merit, sufficient to blanket the entirety of the primordial realm? At this moment, countless beings are drawn to the golden radiance. Whether they are birds and beasts, flowers and trees, or creatures of the water, all beings, mundane or enlightened, step out from the shadows, basking in the golden glow, experiencing its profound wonders. The ordinary beings feel their hidden ailments quietly alleviated under the golden light, while the cultivators sense their cultivation speed accelerating by hundreds or even thousands of times. Yet, before they could fully immerse themselves in this bliss, an enigmatic and indifferent voice reverberates in their ears. Niwa creates the human race, bestowing 10,000 zhang of merit. As the voice fades, the resplendent golden light illuminating the 5 continents and 4 seas vanishes entirely. Without the embrace of the golden glow, all beings feel a profound sense of loss, coupled with immense shock. The unworldly mortals and cultivators, unaccustomed to such wonders, are astounded. They merely basked in this light for a brief moment, yet felt such comfort and saw their cultivation speeds double. How fortunate must the one who received this merit, Lady Niwa, be? Meanwhile, those with greater understanding, including celestial beings and powerful sages, stand speechless as they absorb the implications of the heavenly decree. They had sensed that a great fortune had manifested in the southern continent, but their knowledge was limited. Most speculated that the fortunate one must be among the 3 pure ones, as they, being inner disciples of the saints and manifestations of Pangu's essence, were naturally suited to receive such merit. However, upon hearing the heavenly announcement, they realized the extent of their misconceptions. The one who attained such immense merit was, astonishingly, Niwa, and not just any merit, but 10,000 zhang of it. Such a magnitude implies that Niwa is on the brink of attaining sainthood. This revelation left the celestial beings utterly astonished. In their minds, Niwa undeniably embodies unparalleled grace. This is beyond debate. Yet, in the realm of cultivation, beauty matters not when it comes to talent alone. Niwa ranks merely within the top 10 among the 3,000 guests of Zixiao. Even some powerful beings secretly pondered that Niwa's ascension to become a disciple of a sage was entirely due to her brother Fuxi, a fervent supporter. Consequently, upon hearing the heavenly decree, their initial reaction was disbelief. Could they have misheard? Their second reaction was a cascade of questions. What is the human race? The act of creating humanity directly yields immense merit? What is this human race? How is it created? How did Niwa come to know that the creation of humanity would bestow such great merit? As this question crossed their minds, those powerful beings who had once attended the banquet at Western Kunlun began to awaken to the truth. A remarkably handsome visage instinctively emerged in their thoughts. In that moment, they all comprehended the revelation. The primordial sage, after Niwa had sent them away that day, she must have inquired about something significant from the primordial sage, leading to today's great transformation. They could not remain idle. They needed to seek out the primordial sage to obtain their own opportunities for merit. With this thought, countless powerful beings soared from their abodes, transforming into streaks of light as they sped toward 3 distinct directions: the abode of Fuxi and Niwa at Mount Buzhou, the abodes of the 3 pure ones at Kunlun Mountain, and the abodes of the 2 Buddhas at Mount Shumi in the west. A select few even ventured toward the heavenly realm. Aware of their own status, they felt unworthy to meet the sage alone. So they sought counsel from disciples of the mystical gate, hoping to uncover what Niwa had asked the primordial sage that day. As for their journey to the heavenly realm, Some powerful beings believe that the newly established celestial court by the Eastern King and the Western Queen had a close relationship with the primordial sage. Perhaps consulting them would yield answers. In an instant, the once quiet primordial heavens erupted with activity. Brilliant streaks of light could be seen crossing the sky, truly embodying the saying, "Great Luo golden immortals walk the earth." Meanwhile, the progenitors, Tong, Yi, and Nuwa, remained blissfully unaware of the unfolding events. Even if they were informed, they would have little inclination to concern themselves with it. At that moment, both were gazing skyward along with the tens of thousands of newly birthed human beings. As the immense power of merit descended from the golden pool, it did not solely flow toward Nuwa. Instead, it divided mid-air, like a mighty river splitting into two streams. One portion, constituting 70% of the merit, surged toward Nuwa, while the other, accounting for 30%, flowed toward Tong Yi. Indeed, he too had a share, and it was far more than he had anticipated. As he beheld the oncoming tidal wave of 3,000 zhang of merit, Tong Yi's golden-hued eyes sparkled with delight. In the next instant, he had no time to ponder further as he was completely engulfed by the power of merit. "Oh my!" exclaimed the multitude of young human boys and girls as they witnessed the spectacle. Though he did not fully grasp the concept of merit, he observed with delight as their Holy Father and Holy Mother accepted the bountiful gifts of the celestial way. The multitude of mortals recognized that this was a positive occurrence and felt genuine happiness for their holy figures. Suddenly, a golden wheel began to hover behind the Holy Father, rotating joyously. With each revolution, the wheel expanded rapidly, while the power of merit that enveloped the Holy Father gradually diminished. What is this sensation that has returned? Time slipped away unnoticed. When Tong Yi opened his eyes, he felt an overwhelming joy as he sensed the 3,000 zhang diameter of the golden wheel of merit behind him. In the past, when he vanquished that undead creature, it measured only 1,000 zhang. Later, to entice the remnants of the creation jade disc into imparting the laws of time, he had sacrificed 990 zhang. To his astonishment, he had swiftly restored the golden wheel of merit, even doubling its size. The time he had recently devoted to Nuwa had not been in vain. However, he wondered whether this 3,000 zhang power of merit could elevate the laws of time to their pinnacle. Contemplating this, he quelled his eager spirit and immediately stored the golden wheel of merit, turning to gaze at Nuwa. He noticed that she had also naturally formed a golden wheel of merit behind her, currently absorbing 7,000 zhang of merit power. Upon witnessing this, Tong Yi stroked his chin, feeling somewhat embarrassed. The vast merit was originally entirely Nuwa's. He had heard the proclamation of the celestial way, which made no mention of him. Yet, he had taken 3,000 zhang. Did this imply that Nuwa could not achieve complete merit? Would she turn against him once she realized the extent of her absorbed merit power? With 7,000 zhang of merit and her quasi-saint cultivation, he might truly be no match for her. He needed to devise a solution to this predicament. With this thought, he slowly approached Nuwa, raising his right hand gently. Ding! Detected the golden wheel of merit. Shall it be shattered? Chapter 139. The emergence of malicious thoughts. One must resort to the three-corpse slaying method. No. What am I doing? As the system's notification echoed in his mind, Tong Yi suddenly awakened to the gravity of the situation. His pupils constricted, and he swiftly retracted his right hand. Simultaneously, he began to circulate the Zhixiao Heart Sutra to stabilize his mind, his eyes shimmering with purple light as they scanned the surroundings, and his ears perked to listen intently. He mentally shouted, "System, scan me." That previous thought, was there an issue? Is there some lingering soul attempting to seize control of me? In this moment, Tong Yi was engulfed in terror. He had absolutely no intention of shattering Nuwa. After all, she was his junior sister. Either it is Nuwa who holds significant influence over the entire trajectory of the primordial heavenly Tao, which has made him acutely aware. Even if he were to shatter the connection with the teachings of Jin and Xuandi, he could never dismantle Nuwa. Yet just moments ago, he found himself, almost unconsciously, bewitched and on the verge of taking action. This filled Tong Yi with a profound sense of terror, leading him to ponder whether the arrival of virtuous power had summoned some hidden malevolent entity to ensnare his mind. Subtly, it almost compelled him to act. However, despite his fervent attempts to scan the surroundings with his divine gaze and listen intently with his acute perception, he discerned that apart from Nuwa and countless members of the human race, there were no other presences or echoes within this realm. The realization of this outcome only heightened Tong Yi's fear. He had previously experienced a grave misstep where the remnants of a lingering soul nearly led to his downfall. Could it be that another spectral entity was at play? Yet, to Tong Yi's dismay, the system's notification rang out. Host, no anomalous intrusions detected. What? No lingering souls? What could this mean? Was it merely my own mind? Tong Yi cast a solemn glance at his right hand, murmuring to himself. The deeper he delved into his cultivation, the more he comprehended the profound mysteries of the human body, which could not be encapsulated solely by the 3 souls and 7 spirits, or the essence, vitality, and spirit. This understanding was precisely why he had refrained from engaging with the method of severing the 3 corpses even after acquiring it. He pondered the implications. If there were to be another entity embodying his malevolent thoughts, would it not also possess a system? If so, should that entity be a malevolent corpse, the moment it emerged, it would undoubtedly seek to obliterate its original self. For a malevolent corpse, born of negative thoughts and desires, how could it ever wish to fade away? It would certainly prioritize the destruction of its original form. This logic had dawned upon Tong the moment he grasped the technique of severing the 3 corpses. Furthermore, he sensed that it was not only he who felt this. Even his master, Hongjun Daozu, had become aware of it. Thus, his master did not compel him to practice the method of severing the 3 corpses, but rather encouraged him to pass it down. Yet at this moment, Tong Yi's mind was beset with turmoil. His recent actions seemed as if they were governed by malevolent thoughts and desires. Indeed, even without practicing the method, it did not imply that the 3 corpses ceased to exist. It appeared imperative that he cultivate this path. Only by completely severing it and subsequently integrating it could he ensure his safety. Tong Yi mused to himself, realizing that evasion was not the correct choice. He resolved to pursue the path of severing the 3 corpses, but first, he must return to consult his master, ensuring absolute certainty before undertaking the practice. Otherwise, at long last, the fateful day has arrived. Only malevolent thoughts and desires, accompanied by the essence of the system, emerge. I fear the entire primordial world may be shattered in due time. If heaven and earth were to vanish, what joy could possibly remain in this realm? At that moment, a melodious voice, akin to a babbling brook, resonated in my ears. Tong Yi abruptly returned to his senses, lifting his gaze. Instantly, he was met by the worried and beautiful eyes of Nuwa, filled with concern. "Senior brother, what troubles you? Why do you appear so solemn? Is there a problem?" Nuwa inquired once more. At that moment, she had completely absorbed the power of virtue, condensing a golden wheel of virtue spanning 7,000 zhang. However, before she could revel in her achievement, she noticed her senior brother standing behind her, head bowed and face shadowed in contemplation. This sight struck fear into Nuwa's heart. In her mind, her senior brother was immensely powerful, capable of anything. At times, he even surpassed her own master. After all, her master could not personally guide her on how to create life or harness the power of virtue. Yet, this formidable senior brother now bore a countenance of such gravity. Naturally, Nuwa was filled with anxiety and concern. "It is nothing. There is no need for worry," Tong Yi reassured her, observing the genuine worry reflected in her eyes, causing his heart to ease. In recent days, their interactions had felt effortless and comfortable, and he believed Nuwa's principles were sound. Thus, he harbored no desire to become adversarial with her. At this moment, having just absorbed the power of virtue, her first concern was not to lament the division of her merit, but rather to worry for his well-being. This realization brought relief to Tong Yi. Simultaneously, he felt an increasing urgency to eradicate the malevolent corpse. Damn it, what on earth was that dark thought that just crossed my mind? He pondered. With this in mind, he turned to Nuwa, his tone laced with a hint of regret. "Junior sister, I inadvertently took away 30% of your virtue. You do not hold it against me, do you?" In modern terms, this might have seemed somewhat insincere. Yet, upon hearing his words, Nuwa immediately shook her head, hastily waving her hands in denial. No, no, no. Senior brother, if it were not for you, I would have had no inkling about the power of virtue. I, a foolish sister, am grateful for your guidance and could never blame you," she exclaimed, her voice filled with urgency. She feared that her senior brother might misunderstand her intentions, while simultaneously lamenting that he might misinterpret her feelings. What did she mean to him? Was she merely an ungrateful woman, repaying kindness with enmity? She would gladly share half of her merit with him, even if it were 3,000 zhang. Though Nuwa's heart was filled with grievances, her primary desire was to dispel the misunderstanding. Observing her in such a state, Tong Yi finally smiled with complete understanding. It is indeed a narrow-mindedness on the part of the elder brother. As long as the junior sister does not harbor any grievances, that is sufficient. However, your merits are lacking, and it seems that you will not attain sainthood in the near future. Nuwa was momentarily taken aback. She raised her hand and pointed towards the horizon, inquiring of Tong Yi with a hint of confusion. But, elder brother, the merit clouds still linger. Do they not indicate that we can continue to accrue merits? Tong Yi, upon hearing this, looked up. What met his gaze was still the shimmering golden light. His pupils constricted slightly, and he inwardly exclaimed in astonishment. In his preoccupation with pondering his own dilemmas, he had neglected to observe the skies, failing to realize that the merit clouds remained. This was illogical. Previously, when he had garnered merits, the clouds had appeared and dissipated in an instant. How could they possibly linger? Could it truly be as Nuwa suggested? Was there indeed merit that he had overlooked? With this thought, Tong Yi hastily turned his gaze towards the human clan. In that moment, his eyes brightened, and an answer immediately formed in his mind. Brother, have you discerned it? Nuwa's gaze remained fixed on Tong Yi. The instant his eyes sparkled with realization. Her heart soared with joy, and she promptly approached him. Simultaneously, she followed the direction of his gaze. Yet, Nuwa could discern nothing out of the ordinary. Only countless human beings frolicking with the 6 postnatal beings she had previously created. Beyond that, there was nothing else in this realm. Yes, I have realized. The merits stem from them. In her moment of confusion, Nuwa observed Tong Yi pointing towards the 6 domesticated animals that were playing with the young humans. Had it not been for the lingering clouds, Tong Yi might have also overlooked these creatures. They seemed to possess little presence, yet, in any case, they were indeed new beings. Moreover, it is essential to recognize that within the 6 paths of reincarnation, the realm of beasts is one of them. The 6 domesticated animals represent the realm of beasts, forming an inseparable part of the birth and development of human civilization. Them? Nuwa was initially taken aback, but she quickly grasped the implication, exclaiming with delight, yes. Since they too were created from the colorful clay, they must also be able to accrue merits. As for why the power of merit had not yet descended but instead lingered in the heavens, Nuwa swiftly deduced the answer, naming, just like the human clan. Only by giving them names will the heavenly Tao acknowledge their existence. Am I correct, elder brother? In the face of Nuwa finally engaging her intellect, Tong Yi smiled gently. Yet, recalling her previous thought process, he decided not to let her ponder too deeply, fearing she might mistakenly classify cattle and horses as demon kin. With this thought, he led Nuwa to the first small bird that had been born. This one shall be named Chicken. Nuwa nodded deftly, exhibiting no trace of doubt regarding the name of the chicken or its significance. Instead, she immediately followed Tong Yi's words, pointing at the chicken and proclaiming to the heavens, "This is a chicken." As soon as the declaration left her lips, the long-awaited auspicious clouds seemed to tremble with impatience, and indeed, a stream of virtuous energy descended upon the two. However, upon witnessing this divine force, both Tong Yi and Nuwa were momentarily taken aback, not due to its abundance, but rather its scarcity. In comparison to the monumental merits bestowed upon humanity, the virtue derived from creating a chicken was tragically meager, measuring a mere 500 zhang in size. As before, this virtuous energy split in the air, with 300 zhang directed towards Nuwa and 200 zhang towards Tong Yi. Although they felt a twinge of disappointment at the limited merit, the golden wheel of virtue behind them spun faithfully, rapidly absorbing the bestowed energies, one reaching 7,000 zhang and the other 3,000 zhang. In no time, they had completely assimilated their respective divine powers. Well, better than nothing, Tong Yi remarked, moistening his lips, still yearning for more. Nuwa, however, was eager to proceed, pulling him towards the next newly birthed creature, an endearing little beast that, upon its arrival, promptly relieved itself and consumed its own excrement. This one was aptly named a dog. Without a moment's hesitation and to avoid wasting time, Tong Yi waved his right hand, summoning the remaining 4 livestock to his side. One by one, he designated them. This shall be a pig. This is a cow. This one is a sheep. And this is a horse. Nuwa followed suit, promptly naming each creature. No sooner had she completed the naming of one livestock than the clouds above released another stream of virtuous energy. Each emanation was precisely the same size as that which accompanied the creation of the chicken, 500 zhang. Once again, the two were enveloped by this virtuous power. As Tong Yi felt the influx of this untamed divine energy, he silently expressed gratitude for nature's generous gifts. Though each stream was modest, their sheer number was overwhelming. Together, the 6 livestock yielded a total of 1,800 zhang of virtuous energy for Nuwa and 1,200 zhang for Tong Yi. It was only at this moment that the virtuous clouds in the sky finally dissipated, restoring the scene to a serene blue sky adorned with white clouds. The multitude of humanity gazed up in curiosity, initially believing the heavens to be golden, only to discover the true blue and white hues. Is it gone? Nuwa mused. Having absorbed all the virtue, her gaze drifting towards the mere 8,800 zhang of the golden wheel of virtue behind her. A hint of melancholy seeped into her words. Her master had previously imparted wisdom, stating that to attain sanctity through virtue, one must achieve completeness, amassing the divine energy to a total of 9,999 zhang. Alas, she still fell short. What a pity. The power of virtue is a divine gift bestowed by the heavens. It cannot be given to others, otherwise, I would have helped you accumulate it. Tong Yi observed the distressed expression on Nuwa's face and couldn't help but sigh. He had always been like this. If others treated him sincerely, he would never be stingy. This statement was entirely heartfelt. Otherwise, should I not contemplate ways to assist you in amassing virtue once more? As he spoke, Tong Yi gazed toward the human race. He recalled the primordial novels he had read in his past life, where the human race would become the dominant force in the future world. If he were to guide them, perhaps he could also acquire the power of virtue. After all, how did I achieve sainthood? Was it not merely by establishing teachings for humanity and imparting cultivation methods? To Tong Yi's astonishment, Niwa gently shook her head upon hearing his words. After a moment's hesitation, she finally spoke, albeit reluctantly. Senior brother, I feel my cultivation is insufficient to bear such an abundance of virtue. I must return and refine my skills first. Otherwise, even if I were to attain complete virtue, my current level of cultivation would not allow me to become a saint. Tong Yi was taken aback by her response. Unable to bear the power of virtue. Was this a notion he had never considered? Yet, upon seeing Niwa's grave demeanor, he understood she was not deceiving him. But then, what about them? Tong Yi gestured toward the multitude of humans nearby, bewildered. Niwa shyly nodded. Then I must trouble you, senior brother, to guide them. Without waiting for Tong Yi's reply, she turned to the throng of humans and spoke in a gentle, affectionate tone. Children, the Holy Mother is going to cultivate and will return shortly. Please listen attentively to the teachings of the Holy Father, if you will. Upon hearing her words, the multitude of humans nodded obediently, even the 6 beasts following suit. It is settled then. Senior brother, wait for me. I will strive to reach the pinnacle of quasi-sainthood as quickly as possible to match your pace. Niwa declared, her cheeks flushed, before turning and soaring towards Mount Buzhou, her demeanor resembling one fleeing in haste. Holy Father, what will you teach us? Holy Father, what is that upon you? Why do we not possess it? The moment Niwa departed, the multitude of humans surrounded Tong Yi, leaving him overwhelmed. In that instant, he felt as though countless Holy Fathers were swirling in his mind. The once unremarkable youth from his past life found it challenging to manage so many children. This is a disaster. How careless of me. Chapter 141. I cut down the corpse of virtue. Taishang pays respect to the senior brother. I hope you have been well. Just as Niwa had departed. And while Tong Yi was still troubled about how to care for the children, an elder clad in a white Taoist robe appeared, soaring through the clouds. The elderly man, with snow-white hair and a demeanor that exuded a celestial aura, held the Taiji diagram in one hand and a whisk in the other, embodying the essence of a sage. His manners were impeccably refined. He first descended nearby, then altered his gait, gradually approaching Tong Yi and performing a courteous bow. Upon recognizing the visitor, Tong Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and a sense of astonishment welled up within him, for the newcomer was none other than Laozi himself. His surprise did not stem from the fact that the other had located this place. After all, the emergence of humanity was meant to occur under the light. He had never intended to remain concealed. Nevertheless, the vast expanse of the southern continent posed difficulties. Being an anomaly, it was challenging to deduce his whereabouts. Yet, the presence of the Taiji diagram in the visitor's grasp suggested that it was not his own trajectory being divined, but rather the path of humanity that had been traced. What astonished Tong Yi was that while the visitor was indeed Laozi, he was also not entirely so, despite sharing the same venerable appearance. This individual radiated a more benevolent and compassionate essence. In his gaze, filled with genuine warmth and devoid of pretense, he looked upon the multitude of humanity. Who are you? A benevolent corpse? Tong Yi momentarily marveled before swiftly grasping the reason and articulating his thoughts. Upon hearing this, the elder was initially taken aback, his expression revealing a recognition of the truth. Indeed, it was impossible to conceal anything from his senior disciple. I am the benevolent corpse of Laozi, the Taishang Taoist. The Taishang Taoist addressed Tong Yi with a respectful bow, his tone imbued with admiration. He felt a deep sense of reverence for the sage, realizing how effortlessly he discerned his uniqueness with just a glance. As for why he had appeared in this place, the tale was lengthy, yet I shall condense it. Previously, upon witnessing the emergence of auspicious clouds of virtue in the southern continent, Laozi, situated on Kunlun Mountain, sensed that he could manifest a benevolent corpse. He immediately entered seclusion, utilizing the Taiji diagram as guidance to refine his benevolent intentions. To his astonishment, the process was remarkably smooth, allowing him to swiftly distill his benevolence into a pure essence. Moreover, Laozi discovered a profound resonance between the Taiji diagram, one of the shards of the divine acts of creation, and his benevolent intentions. He then embodied this essence of benevolence within the Taiji diagram. Soon, as if the universe conspired in his favor, he successfully manifested the Taishang Taoist, a being composed solely of benevolence and morality. To Laozi's surprise, the moment the Taishang was manifested, he immediately sensed a fortuitous opportunity in the south. Laozi experienced a mix of discomfort and joy. His own essence had not perceived any opportunity, yet the benevolent corpse had. Did this imply that his complete self was unworthy? However, he dismissed such thoughts. Regardless of whether the path ahead involved severing the three corpses or achieving sanctity through virtue, he would not let any opportunity slip away. Whatever the nature of the chance, it was rightfully his. He promptly sent the benevolent corpse to search in the southern continent, but little did he expect. At this moment, he truly discovered the opportunity for merit. Observing myriad beings with innate Tao bodies, yet devoid of any cultivation, all resembling celestial youths. He then beheld their elder brother, surrounded by the throng. The supreme Taoist, stroking his beard, immediately deduced that these were indeed members of the human race. Upon hearing the Supreme's words, Tong Yi slightly nodded, though his sword-like brows furrowed. He promptly pointed out the flaw. I remember that our master did not impart the method for severing the three corpses to you. As he spoke, his right hand subtly moved. A sense of danger surged. The supreme Taoist, perceiving this,